Hello, and welcome to Big Witch Energy, the podcast that journeys into the wonderful and witchy world of Motherland, Fort Salem. We're going to recap and discuss all of the delicious content in every episode. I'm Bree.
And I'm Theora.
Come along with us while we dive deep into the hows, whys, whos, and what of this amazing show.
All right. Are you ready to talk about this episode?
Listen,
I know. No, me neither.
I forgot how depressing this episode is.
I know.
The only good parts, like you said earlier, the only good parts are Isadora parts. But even there's one, part of that I
Isadora.
Don't like.
I know.
Come on, girl.
I forgot about one of the scenes, and I was like, Isadora.
See, when you come, you're like, oh, wait a minute.
No, I had to change my whole what was Isadora doing off screen because of the one moment. I was like, damn it. I know. So
what are you gonna do?
I know. There'll be lots of stalling because this episode is just heavy.
It's so heavy, and it is not heavy for one character. It's heavy for everybody. All the characters.
No, like we said last episode, that's the dawn of a new era. This is the labor in pain episode where everybody is in pain for their new era journey. It's just the worst.
It is the worst.
But we have to talk about this. So let's just rip off the Band-Aid.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so this is episode 6. It's called Up is Down, and boy, is that an apt title for this episode.
It really is.
It really is.
I really like the like you see going through how that applies to everyone.
Literally everyone, including Isadora.
Including Isadora.
This episode was written by Maria Magenti. Great job, girl. I guess you really like drama because, hey.
Angst and drama.
Thanks, Maria. And then directed by Rebecca Johnson. So our ladies gave us Up is Down. Thanks, I guess.
Yeah, thanks for making me cry 17 times.
Thanks for upping. First time I watched this, the anxiety was just everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it starts really with the first scene because me watching this the first time, I'm like, where's Scylla? And it doesn't open with Scylla. So it opens with footsteps in the desert. And I was already mad when I first watched this. I was like, this tells me nothing about what I want to know.
The only thing I could think about was that super ubiquitous footsteps in the sand thing. Where it was like Jesus was on your back or something.
I mean, the Jesus light is here, so where are we and what is this? But it's not Scylla. We're in a windstorm, and there's a dude. So I was already mad. I was like, this is not what I signed up for.
Not Scylla.
This isn't Scylla. But it was the lesbian Jesus light, so I didn't expect to see her, but still. And the mysterious footsteps turn into a dude carrying a child. And the two of them arrive at a military outpost. And the title card says last known location of the Tarim. And so Comrade Boris is going to be pissed because he was like, well, Russia can take them. And now they're at a U.S. military outpost. So we've offended Boris. Or Comrade Boris. And dude collapses, holding the girl. And this soldier runs out and says, they're here. So I guess they were expecting them, weirdly enough.
Why didn't they go get them is my question.
Listen, they're like, well, we'll take you in, but you have to get here.
Yeah.
We're gonna come help you.
You have to walk across the desert in a windstorm.
I know.
With your entire face, every exposed piece of skin chapped.
I know. Wind. Totally. I was gonna say that he's sunburned and he looks like he hasn't drunk water in a very long time. And they were clearly expecting them, but they're like, we'll help you when you get here, but we're not gonna.
And the girl's ill. You can obviously tell.
The girl is unconscious. And they just look grimy, and that's the beginning. So it's not Scylla, number one. And number two, it's this very bizarre scene of we were expecting you, but we didn't help you. You had to struggle a bit. Go United States.
Wow, that is a metaphor for the United States.
It sure is. Great job, Maria. She knows.
Bootstraps.
Yeah. So, that opening scene says a lot of things that I just we're going down a dark path for this episode.
But then we get the opening credits.
We sure do.
After that.
So we needed something happy after that. It's the great opening credits.
Well, that we'll always watch.
Always.
Then the first scene after the opening credits is Abigail, and it's seriously beautifully shot. Her face is like beaten and bloody. So it's right after that altercation with the not so spree people.
Yeah. Nobody let this girl shower. That makes me so upset. She's still covered in blood.
Thank you. She's covered in blood. She's got
Give
it
her a
all over.
towel. Like, what the hell?
She's beaten up. Something like get the girl a bag of ice. I don't know.
Yeah, like you guys are witches. What the hell?
So she's getting these like that tear going down her face though.
Oh god, that shot was just whew, that says a lot.
The first time I watched this episode, I was already gone by that point, just seeing that shot.
Yeah.
In Ashley's face.
Mm-hmm.
It like punches you.
It does. Ugh,
in all the places.
Yeah.
So she's getting flashes of Charvel in the bathtub, and there's a soldier there with her who's taking down the details of what happened, and she's trying to describe it, but it's coming out garbled, like she's getting all of these flashes out of order, and she's trying to say certain things that will give information like, oh, their shoes were this or their shirts were this color, they were waiters, and then she'll kind of be like, no, they were this instead. So it's really giving you a picture of how unreliable your memory is during traumatic events.
Totally.
And that's a proven fact in courts of law, that your memory is just not as reliable as you think it is. So it's frustrating to see her struggle through this, but what's even more frustrating is that, to me anyway, the person who is interviewing her won't let her talk and like suss out what's going on. Like if you really listened to her, you could put the pieces in the right order. And I get that she's concerned about Abigail and saying, hey, we don't have to do this right now. We can get you some water.
A shower
Maybe.
Yeah.
But basically, she says the most important part, which is it was the screeching.
Mm-hmm.
She tried to do a sigil, and then she kind of veers off in another direction, but she kind of comes back to it in the end. So we know that she acknowledges that that frequency and that breastplate that the dude was wearing was what made her work not functional. Then we switch. I don't know if you have anything to say about that scene.
I just wanted to say, I love the way this whole scene is directed, because it really gives you this disjointed perspective, which I think is, like you said, it's basically what Abigail's feeling. And when she's having like the Charvel memories, it's very like, it's intercut very quickly with this jarring music while she's having like, she's trying to give the story, but then she's having these like flashes with her last moments with Charvel that are all like happy memories. So it's very chaotic, because like that's Abigail's brain right now. And I just wanted to talk about the color in this scene. When we're in the room with Abigail in particular is in this very like golden-ish light, but the way she's lit, it's like half of her face is lit and the other half is shadowed. And I think that's trying to show you this like disjointed splitting she's having with her brain. It's like the harshness of the battle, like the trauma, and then like the happy memories with Charvel. And I think they're trying to show that with the light. But when we go into the memories with Charvel, it's the colors are flat. Like there's no contrast. It's just this very flat, bland lighting. So, and there's no shadows, there's no stark contrast. So it's supposed to contrast like reality, where reality is very harsh light. It's lots of darkness versus like the memory that's flat in Abigail's mind. And so I think it's trying to show that like how Abigail's just like fracturing, and they're using the light to really show that. Because when they show the other officer, she has the golden light on her and some shadows, but it's not nearly as harsh as Abigail.
Yeah, she's in the spotlight, so to speak, but also in her own head.
Yeah.
Like it's
very sad, and I think they use the lighting really nicely to show that. And when we get to the next scene with Petra, she has very similar lighting where it's like very shadowed and very like gold, because she's going through her own stuff. So kudos on the directing and the lighting. It's very powerful.
This entire episode had really great lighting and music, everything. They all do, but this one particularly, I noticed it.
Yeah, totally.
So we go to Mama Bellwether, and she's staring off into space in her own world. We imagine she's kind of having a similar experience to Abigail. but we don't see that. So she's got 2 officers with her, and they ask her if she's sure she wants to do this now. So they're echoing what the interviewer asking Abigail questions was saying. And she says, yeah, let's go. And also, I'd like to go back and also make a note about how Abigail says, I'm a bellwether, when that's what she's supposed to do. She's supposed to just push through it. Another theme in this episode, keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's Abigail stepping out of the bellwether shadow and being Abigail,
Exactly.
which kind of started in the last episode. And here you see the harshness of that reality, that transformation for her.
So with Mama Bellwether, they've got a bunch of seed sounds in boxes, and they're opening them, trying to find the one that rendered Witch's work unusable during the fight scene. So the first one they open, you can tell that it is harsh to everyone in the room, but Petra says it's not the one, and they're like, are you sure it does everything that you said that the other one did? And she's like, listen, I done fought this one and won, so
Ooh.
I think I know. Next, thank you.
Big witch energy.
Big witch energy. And that's pretty much the end of that scene. But like you said, we did have the same lighting and a little bit of Petra's trauma as well.
Yeah, you can see that this is, and she's almost handling this a little bit like Abigail too, where she's like, no, let's keep going. And she's like, next sound, like, let's keep going. Like, even though she's obviously struggling.
So you see her thinking, I'm a bellwether, so this is...
Yeah, and she's the veteran bellwether who's been through this before, but you can tell that this whole situation has rattled her a little bit, and it becomes a little bit more apparent as this episode keeps going.
Yep.
So it's different for Mama Bellwether too, and also traumatic for Abigail. And I must say, the seed sound, not nearly as pleasant as Comrade Boris's egg sound.
Hello, that Comrade Boris's egg sound, is that what that's a t-shirt somewhere.
I had to bring up that phrase again because it's really funny.
I absolutely...
That was your phrase.
Sorry. I know.
Okay.
I know people are not going to care about Comrade Boris, but I love him.
I love him and his egg set. See, look, and again, the weird boxes that Isadora found in the trash that they're putting these sounds in, not a Fabergé
Like, these are old, old 19th century cigar boxes that we just pulled out of the trash.
Yeah. Isadora found those in the trash, let's be real. She's like, put that in there, I don't care. Leave me alone.
She doesn't care. Fabergé eggs, what?
She's like, a sound is a sound. I don't care. So, Comrade Boris, they should really outsource these things to you because you're better at this.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so while the Bellwethers are having their interrogation/therapy session, Raelle is pacing the hallway with Tally. And she's just losing her shit right now. Her voice is cracking and she's ranting about Scylla, basically, to Tally, who's just staring at the door and, wishes she wasn't there. And Raelle's going on. She's like, Scylla was right behind us. We turned around. She was gone. Like, what the hell just happened? I'm so confused. And Tally just cuts her off. She's like, look, it was chaos. Like, people were everywhere. And the whole thing is very un-Tally-like because she's not trying to comfort Raelle, which is a Tally instinct. And her responses have no empathy whatsoever. And she refuses to even look at Raelle. Tally's very guilty right now by what she did for outing Scylla, even though in the moment she was being a good soldier. She was doing what she thought was best in the long run. But by doing so, the consequence of that is she has to keep this secret about Scylla from Raelle when Raelle is so clearly besides herself and just racked with all this grief. And it's very uncomfortable to watch because you could tell that Tally would want to say something but can't. And Raelle just keeps hysterically gushing this whole time because she just can't help it. So she continues and asks Tally, do you think she got swept up in the storm? Like, are people looking for her? And Tally, being the good soldier, is just like, look, I'm sure the army is looking into this because I tipped off the army and they're supposed to be looking into this. But that is not the response to give Raelle when she's upset about losing her girlfriend, is being like, oh, the army's got this. And so she just flips into what we're all thinking. And she's like, well, Anacostia is in charge, right? because she loves Scylla so much. I'm sure she's looking into this. And Tally's just like, listen, stop focusing on it. Like, it's this very weak, like, command that's void of emotion, because I think Tally is also racked with grief and is like, I can't listen to you, like, gush anymore. This is hurting me.
Tally was talking to herself as much as she was Raelle.
Yes, no, that was Tally talking to herself. That is a great observation, because in this moment, she made this choice to be loyal to the army and is choosing to stick with that despite her unit mates suffering. And I know that if she told her, like, well, Scylla's alive, like, don't worry so much about it, that would alleviate some small part of this burden Raelle's carrying. But Tally just can't give her anything because it's classified and she's a soldier. And so at this point, now you have like two characters who are lying to Raelle. You have Scylla, who's been lying to Raelle the whole time. And then now you have Tally. Granted, they're for two different reasons, but it's like still this pattern of poor Raelle just being like grief stricken and like having people lie to her. And the question is, like, is Tally's lie less terrible than Scylla's lying? They're both lying to her. Does the motive change that? You know, that's reality, right?
The amount of lying was much greater with Scylla than it was with Tally. And I don't think you can't obviously see the amount of guilt. Like, at this point, you don't know how Scylla feels about lying to Raelle.
Not yet.
However, Tally, it's written all over her face. And because Raelle's so concerned with what's happened to Scylla, she doesn't really pick up on it. The fact that Tally's acting differently.
No.
Because she really is. There's the way that she snaps at everybody in this episode.
Yes.
Very un-Tally-like, but I mean, obviously we know why. In the end, I think it was a good thing that Tally was snapping at people in a way, because I think it did help Abigail, but in this moment, it's gotta be so hard to watch Raelle falling apart. That should be the title of this episode. Raelle falls apart.
That should be the title of the show. Poor Raelle. Raelle falls apart. But if you think about it, both Scylla and Tally were lying to Raelle because in their minds they're doing something for the greater good.
Oh, absolutely.
So like this lie kind of outweighs the bigger picture for both of them. But you see that Tally is now in this position she's never been in before. And Elliot talks about it in the After the Storm. Like, Tally's always like the peacemaker, but with everybody, wants to keep everything running. But now she views this decision to out Scylla as this epic betrayal to Raelle. And so now she's in this, again, it's like a new position for Tally, like dawn of a new era for Tally, where she has to decide, like, well, is the army so black and white, or is there other stuff going on here? So it's fascinating because everybody's like in a new world, kind of, with their situations.
A whole new world.
In the worst possible way. But Tally is not handling this very well at this moment.
No one's handling anything very well in this episode, honestly.
No.
Except for Bridie, which we'll meet
Bridie
later.
rules. We'll get there.
Yeah.
And then Raelle, you know, if you think about it, so Tally's off in like little Tally land trying to grapple with her stuff. And then Raelle is like Willa Kala triggered, but worse, because now she again has lost the most important person in the world to her suddenly without warning. And Elliot says that when this happens, it sends Raelle to a very, very dark place, which we see in this episode. Like, and she's trying to grapple with what she saw. So like her memory, kind of to harken back to Abigail, like she knows what she saw. And then she's trying to reconcile that with what everybody's telling her. Like, oh, she's gone, like all this stuff. And Raelle's like, I saw her, like, what? And then it just throws her into this he called it a desperate insanity. And watching her deal with that just sucks. And that's the whole basic episode. But I think part of what's going on with Raelle too is that there's a guilt component with Scylla that wasn't there with her mom, because Scylla was at the wedding because of her. And so in a way, I think she kind of blames herself. And so she's trying to project that too. And we saw in the end of the episode, like Raelle, like when the chaos with the balloons was happening, she like touched Scylla's arm and then went to go help other people. So she didn't even stick with Scylla. So I think she's like also thinking like, well, if I had stuck with her, if I had done something differently. And so there's just so much guilt on Raelle. And then, yeah, she's trying to just reconcile all these things. And Tally's not a sounding board to help her right now because Tally can't. And I think Raelle just keeps getting further isolated by choice or by external forces. And that kind of leads her on this path.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up, is that Raelle has to feel super guilty because unlike her mother who died far away in a war zone.
Yeah, because of war, right.
Because of war, Scylla was right there. She touched her and then she wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
So she's gonna blame herself and also be like, I was right there.
Yeah. No, totally. I think that's definitely part of what's happening here. It's like survivor guilt in a way, where you're like, but if I had just done, yeah, it's the what ifs really. And the other thing that Taylor talks about that's really, really weighing on Raelle is the fact that she didn't tell Scylla she loved her. And because she was scared of confirming her feelings at that point. So the other piece is that she has no closure at all with Scylla. And so she's just trying to find answers to give herself closure because the what ifs are just going to continue until she has closure. And so it's very, very heartbreaking for Raelle.
We know Raelle wears her emotions on her sleeves anyway. And at this point, they're screaming out into the ether.
Oh, yes. Yes, like a banshee. It's really bad.
So,
yeah, so
Abigail.
All right, so after we get a glimpse of where where Tally and Raelle are at in general, Abigail bursts out of the office. And what's interesting here is that the first person to ask Abigail if she's okay is Raelle, which again is weird because usually it's Tally, and Tally was closest to Abigail, like physically, but Raelle's the one who's like, hey, are you okay? So again, like everybody's different in this episode.
Tally's disconnected from the unit in a way.
Yeah, Tally's just like lost in her own head. And everybody's kind of disconnected from each other for their own reasons. But yeah, the Tally one is just the weirdest because she's usually the one who's like unity, and that's not where her head's at right now. So it's very weird. And Abigail is in this position where she obviously is not okay by the scene we just saw with her, but she's trying to be the bellwether. So she's just like, hey, standard procedure, head held high. And she just keeps going, like past the two of them. And they're pressing her like, oh, do you want to talk about it? She's like, I just spent 2 hours talking. Like, I need a shower. Like, leave me alone. And she just goes and like, Tally is Tally now and tries to go after her, but Raelle stops her. And it's, yeah, everybody's just reeling right now.
Because Raelle gets it.
Yeah. No, they talk about this and After the Storm too. Like, Elliot talks about how Abigail and Raelle just both went through this very traumatic thing where they lose people. And this is something that bonds them again together. It's like when you go to battle and like that shared struggle like bonds you together. That's kind of what's happening with Abigail and Raelle. Even though they didn't lose the same person, it's still that shared grief.
Parallel grief bonds.
Totally.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the way Abigail said, I just spent 2 hours talking about this because that's exactly what I would have said.
It's so true. It's like, I was literally, I'm done talking. I need a shower.
I'm done talking. I need a shower. Look at me.
Look at me.
I have a giant knife wound or had one before I got fixed.
Yeah, poor Abigail.
My uniform is all ripped up. Need to go get a new one.
I need to do anything but talk right now.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
I would be like, let me just sit in a dark, quiet room for about 5 hours.
I need to sleep for a week.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah.
Did you have anything else on that?
No.
All right. So our next scene is Khalida in the infirmary. So little girl, aka Khalida, is in bed and she's got black webby lines all over the exposed part of her neck.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a man, Adil, who is chanting in an unknown language. I'm guessing it's mother tongue, but I couldn't really tell.
I guess they don't tell you in the subtitles, and they usually tell you when it's mother tongue. So
yeah, they usually tell you when it's mother tongue. So I'm thinking it's maybe a Tarim dialect.
Maybe, but I thought they spoke mother tongue, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, that's where I got a little confused.
Elliot, explain.
Elliot, explain. He's holding her hand. And I'm wondering, is he praying? Is he trying to heal her? Is he just doing like a general blessing?
The lesbian Jesus light is on the bed. So I'm going with healing prayer.
There's so much lesbian Jesus light in this episode.
We'll get to why that is. But yes, there is. Just note all the sightings.
But General Alder and her biddies approach and welcome Adil. And he shakes her hand and thanks her for bringing them to Fort Salem. And she does her usual, we're glad you're here kind of stuff. And he says, He's like, listen, once she's good to go, we're outie and we won't bother you anymore. And General Alder's like, oh, wait a minute. You can stay as long as you need.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any kind of other motivations for having you here. She encourages him to spend some time away from the infirmary because the grounds will nourish him. And I just want to know if the grounds have witchy powers that make you feel better. Because can I go there?
Right.
So,
some Fort Salem rest and relaxation.
Exactly. The spa of Fort Salem.
Right. They should start charging. Come on, guys.
Exactly. But Adil isn't buying it. You can tell he is not dumb, and he knows there are expectations attached to their stay there.
Yeah, anytime someone wants to help the Tarim, they're like, yeah, we'll help you for no reason. Fingers crossed.
All over the place.
Strings, I can see the strings. Yeah.
And Alder isn't good at hiding that
she's so
either.
Bad. Oh,
she's
God,
so bad. She looks so predatory in a way when she's in this episode. Every time she's around the Tarim, it's like she's rubbing her hands together like an evil overlord or something.
No, she is. That's an apt description.
Give me those songs.
I mean, go rejuvenate somewhere on the grounds. It's fine.
Yeah. Go rejuvenate and really get used to being here and really like it.
It's like the thing where they're like, it's totally free, but then the fine print, it says all the strings. She's like, just accept the terms and conditions of this free thing I'm giving you.
Yeah, click accept.
Click accept. Yeah, don't read the 300 pages of nonsense. It's fine.
What? Lawyer? No, just...
What? I get all your songs? I don't know. Who put that in there?
Who put that in there? I didn't put that in there. That must have been the biddies. God, same brain cell in action.
It's part of their risk game. Yeah.
Apparently, they were over there like, okay, how can we get an advantage for our general?
Yeah.
We'll steal the Tarim songs.
Yep. It's all the biddies.
So, I don't know if you have anything else for this, but I know you're going to be super excited for the next scene.
Yes. Before we get to, I love the next scene. Before we get there, I just want to talk about a couple of things in this scene. So, number one, Khalida's bed is surrounded by a salt circle. And they're my dogs. I think it's interesting because it keeps they keep showing this salt circle and like who's in it and who's not in it. I think is interesting. So salt circles are like to keep out negative energy, keep good energy in. So it's like part of like the healing, like a healing circle, I guess, in her condition. So I think that's interesting. And then when Alder comes in with the biddies, the lighting again, they're in the dark, and Khalida and Adil are in the gold light. So I think that's kind of to harken back to what you were talking about. It's lighting symbolizing like good intentions versus bad intentions kind of thing. So I love the way they use the lighting in this episode. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right. Now we're going to Isadora and the necro minions getting their autopsy on in the necro lab, now morgue.
Sentences you never thought you'd hear, getting their autopsy on.
They're getting their autopsy on. Note the lighting in the morgue. It's very white and sterile looking, like science. And it's not blue, so it means Scylla will not be in the scene. But whatever. We get Isadora, so we'll take what we can get. The necros are very rudely interrupted by Mama Bellwether, who's just like, I came to check in on your part of the investigation. And I love that neither Isadora nor Mama Bellwether do any small talk, because these women are all business all the time. And Isadora's like, yeah, 17 victims from 6 different states. Okay, let's pause right there. So, 17 people killed in 6 different states. Spree is not capable of this, because Isadora lets it drop that they were all killed at the exact same time. Does that sound like something the Spree can do? They can barely let off balloons at a mall. Like, come on. Just throwing that out there.
They're not organized enough.
No! How on earth would they ever pull that off? The Spree can't do that. They're not capable. So, put a pin in that, because good dialogue. And the whole time they're just trying to figure out, well, are these civilians or are these witches? No one wants to say that, but that's kind of what they're getting at. Because they think it's the Spree, but the Spree doesn't kill witches, right? Unless they're battling for real or
Such
whatever.
a clue. Collateral damage.
Damage.
These were targeted killings.
All at the same time, 17 people.
Thank you.
Yes. Exactly. But
it was not the Spree in the library with the candlestick.
No, it wasn't. When the biddies play Clue, they figured this out. That's their other game when they're not playing Risk.
Clue.
Biddy Clue.
Biddy Clue.
Biddy Clue. And this whole time, Petra is just like grilling Isadora. And Isadora looks so annoyed that she's in her lab. And like, if she had her scientist glasses on, she'd like whip them off dramatically at the audacity of this woman in her lab. But she's just like, Petra's like, listen, do you have any answers? And Isadora's just like waving at the minions. She's like, we are in the middle of our scientific experiment. Like, look at them. Like, there's a bunch of bodies. Like, we're not lesbian Jesus, we're scientists. We don't do miracles here. Leave us alone so we can maybe figure this out. And Isadora mentions what they know so far. Because like a good scientist, she can't give you the answer because she doesn't have all the data yet. So she's like, listen, their vocal cords have been removed. That's all we know. And so Petra's like, okay, I guess not civilians, maybe. And yeah, they talk about the spree. And then Isadora, like, tunes out Mama Bellwether at one point. She's like, I'm just going to go back to my body. Like, you can watch if you want to, but I have things to do. And so her and the minions get to work. And what they discover through their autopsy, while poor Petra is like squeamishly watching this, is they find that one of the minions finds that the vocal cords are different on one of the bodies that I guess still has the vocal cords. Like, it was weird. I thought they took them, but whatever. And Isadora's like, okay, that's a bad clue. And then she's like, check the ears, because that's the other witch anatomy that's different. And one of them that is summoned but to Isadora with a wave of a hand says, tympanic membrane with 5 malleae. Now, Bree, would you like a little surgery corner moment to talk about this?
I'm going to try not to be too technical or harsh.
Highlights.
Yeah, surgical highlights, I guess. So, if you know anything about the anatomy of the ear, you have the ear canal, and I'm going to try to put it in layman's terms. Then there's the eardrum, so the membrane that vibrates with the sound waves, and connected to your tympanic membrane or your eardrum are 3 little tiny bones called ossicles. So you've got they have like layman names, like the hammer is the first one. I don't ever remember the layman terms.
That's the malleus. That's the hammer.
That's the malleus.
Yeah.
And then you've got your incus and stapes. And they're all kind of connected together in this way where the sound vibrations make them move, and they tap against the cochlea, which is the part where the hearing really happens. Like, it converts those sound waves into impulses for your brain to process.
Right.
And it doesn't really make sense in a medical way for there to be 5 malleae.
No.
Because it's connected in the structure with the incus and the stapes in a way that doesn't make any sense for that. It would make more sense for there to be more cilia in their cochlea to process more sound frequencies. Just a little like picky science thing there. Also, the way that assistant cut the ear open. Sister, we need to talk. Also, she's using, when they're looking at the vocal cords in Isadora's body, not Isadora's actual body,
Whoa.
but the dead body.
You leave Isadora alone.
The dead body that Isadora is possessing in her lab at the moment.
One of her specimens.
She's using this self-retaining retractor to keep, like, she's pretending that she's giving more a better view. First of all, it's dark as hell in there.
I know.
You can't see inside the middle ear like that. And you cannot see inside the throat like that. And also, this lab assistant does not know how to use a self-retaining retractor because she keeps moving it with her hand. You literally ratchet it out and leave it there. That's why it's self-retaining. So if you guys need a medical consultant, invite me.
Yeah, for real. So that was Bree's surgery corner. And just to comment just a little bit on the malleus, and like, I think why they went with 5 of these is because, like Bree mentioned, it's the hammer. So I think it's just indicating that they can like detect different sound frequencies. So they talk about like, when they're doing their seeds, like subvocal seeds, like beyond the range of human hearing. So like this is like an anatomy piece of the ear that lets them hear outside of the range of human hearing too, even though medically it doesn't make any sense.
I think they just picked a thing that sounded good and went with it.
Hammers, 5 hammers, sure, witches. And yeah, I think that's how they got here, but anatomically it makes no sense. But that's the ear. So that was a big clue. And then Isadora's like, okay, there's one more piece. I can't confirm anything without witches' marks because I'm a scientist. I need all the data. So she's like, look for marks. And I don't know what she does, but Isadora like hovers her hands above the body until it leads her to the witch's ear that they were just dissecting. And she finds a very, very faint witch's mark. And so Isadora's like, I have all 3 pieces of data. Holy shit, these are witches. And one of the minions finds a better mark on one of the other corpses. And Petra goes over there to look at it. And Isadora makes the conclusion. She's like, these are witches. 17 witches were killed. And Petra's like, her demeanor shifts from like inquisitive and like all business to like scared. And she whips out her shiny witch mark and is like, they're bellwethers. And I thought this was interesting too, because I guess the marks for the family matrilines are identical too. Like not only do like witches all have witch marks, but I guess the matriline keeps the same shape. So like the bellwether mark is like this little bat looking thing. And I guess
I was going to say it looks like a bat.
Yeah, I guess all the bellwethers have these bat shaped witch marks because it looked like the one Abigail flashed to Tally in the pilot. So I thought that was also an interesting clue.
Kind of like that you can pretty much identify a matriline by their mark.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And just a comment on after the storm stuff about this whole scene. So while this is all happening, you see that they're all disturbed by this, like all the witches. And part of the reason is Elliot's saying like the vocal cords is like the source of the witch's power. And so it's a symbol too of being a witch. And so removing it is this act of hatred towards them. And what Mama Bellwether gets from this whole thing is that the Bellwethers are being targeted specifically because all 17 of them were Bellwethers. And the reason for that is they're like one of the primary matrilines. And so Elliot says, if you want to attack witches or witchery, you go for the primary genetics. So that's what's happening here outside of like targeting just like bellwethers. It's like whoever's doing this is targeting witches in this prejudiced hatred kind of way. So that's significant.
Which should absolutely be another clue that this is not the spree.
No, the spree are bad spies. So they could never in a million years pull this off. Like never. And then why on earth would they commit an act of hatred against witches when they're witches? And their issue is not witches. Their issue is the system everybody's trapped in. So yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And some critical thinking would be a good thing here.
Yep.
I get for the story, we need everybody to kind of stick to that line. And I do think that you can see a little bit that I think especially Petra is cottoning on to how this doesn't line up with stuff. It's just some of the things that she says and some of the things that Isadora says about the spree and how this doesn't fit their modus operandi.
And it's good for Petra to be the one who's questioning this because she's the head of intelligence. So, like, if anyone's questioning, we want that person questioning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really liked this scene because Isadora is awesome.
She's in her element. It's so good.
And the way that she was just laying things out there, so just straightforward, to the point. I loved it.
I just love her answers. I'm sorry. They're so, like medical and like scientist where you're just like, I can't give you an answer. I need more data. Mm-hmm. Like it's such a scientist answer. I love it. So
I love it too. Good. She's such a scientist. But that gets us to what I like to call Salva 2.0.
Explain to me how this was any safer than what Raelle and Scylla were doing in the pilot. Explain this to me. Where was Anacostia's protest for all of everyone in basics doing this?
It's supervised. That's the only thing I can tell you. I can't tell you anything more.
It makes no sense.
The only other thing I can say is that they didn't know how much salva the girls had taken when they were alone, and they do in this.
I guess. No one's tethered.
I just think that
it's dumb.
this was part of Anacostia's I Hate Scylla campaign.
Yeah, I feel like she just started hating Scylla and then was like, I'll find a reason later.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway,
But
sorry.
I love this instructor.
Me too. I love
She's
this
so
instructor.
cool.
She's
I want
really
this
cool.
instructor to teach me.
I know.
She's like the Motherland Fort Salem version of a Hogwarts teacher.
Yes. Like whoever taught them, I forget her name, but who taught them to do like the broom flying.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she reminds me of her. Like she's super fun. And it's like, what, can we have more of this woman? She's great.
Even her hair and her face reminds me, it was like so Hogwarts.
Yeah, she's awesome. This lesson is not safe, but she's awesome.
Not safe, and I don't think she cares. I don't think
that's what I'm saying. Nobody cares.
Maybe Anacostia doesn't know that this is how they're doing it. I don't know.
God, it's ridiculous.
But so the opening shot is of this rope ladder from the bottom, from the ground, and the rope ladder leads to a tall platform. And once again, we are in Raelle's light, like hardcore
big Raelle scene.
And then we have our serious Harry Potter teacher at Hogwarts vibes instructor who is basically saying, the world's going to hell. All of you girls have seen it. We've all seen it. So let's get high. No, I'm just kidding.
It's such a good opening lesson. You're like, everything sucks. Let's fly.
Everything sucks. So at least we don't have to kiss a hairy man's ass.
Oh my God, I love that dialogue at the end. Like, we gotta do that, but we gotta jump out of a treehouse untethered.
Yeah. So she starts talking about how priests thought witches congregated on hills on dark nights and danced around kissing the ass of a hairy man so he'd give them everything they want. And flight was the ultimate gift, I suppose.
I guess.
So, but good news, we don't have to kiss anyone's ass to fly now. So I just love that whole if you haven't, go back and listen to that whole piece of dialogue again, because it's so fun.
This woman's awesome. All of her dialogue is great.
It really is, and I wish that she appeared more.
Me too. I love this instructor.
I want her back, and I want to know her name.
Yeah, we don't even... It's homophobia. We don't get her name.
It's homophobia, yeah. So she managed to make the girls laugh, except for Raelle, who is just not in the headspace at all. Even Abigail chuckles a little bit, but...
No, Raelle's having PTSD flashbacks right now.
But they're obviously not okay, both of them. So she shows them how to use salva by going up the rope ladder and using it herself to float down very gracefully.
Yes.
And she's looking out over all of the cadets, and she picks Raelle to go first because she's the only one who's had experience. Ha ha ha.
Mm-hmm.
And Raelle definitely does not look thrilled about being cornered with this, but the instructor is like, don't be afraid. And of course, Raelle pops back with, I'm not afraid.
She's not afraid. She's just sad.
She's just sad. She's sad. Leave her alone.
She's being triggered right now.
Leave Raelle alone, 2K21. But she takes the salva, she goes up the rope ladder, and she puts the salva star on her neck, just like she did in the scene with Scylla. When she steps off the platform, you see her floating, and she's just kind of chilling up there at first. And we've got the sun behind her, and she kind of goes in and out of blocking the sun from the camera. And it's giving this like super goddess like light situation going on. And then
she's a sun god.
She's a sun god. And then the Raelle and Scylla theme comes in, which is a big thing in this episode. It shows up over and over in various ways. So you start to hear the Raelle and Scylla theme, and you've got this total Jesus light moment. She does a flip, and then she reaches out like she's reaching for Scylla in the salva scene.
Yeah, she closes her eyes like she's having the memory.
She closes her eyes, and then you see the flashes of Scylla in front of her, and it just makes you want to cry so hard.
It does.
She sees Scylla looking right back at her exactly like that night, and then we zoom out and see them floating together in the scene, the original salva scene. So after all of that heartbreaking scenery in her head, she falls, just like she did the night that she took salva with Scylla.
From a much higher distance because they're not tethered in this supervised exercise.
Yep, so she falls and it obviously knocks the wind out of her. And I want to know, did the salva run out? Did her emotions make her fall? Because this is going to be important later.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently it's, if you get overwhelmed, I think that if you get overwhelmed by emotions, you have less control over how the salva is affecting you, maybe?
Yeah, Taylor talks about that a little bit in After the Storm, and that's part of it. The other part she talks about, like later when there's a bigger salva scene with Raelle, it's that she doesn't know how to control it yet.
Yeah.
And so it's partially she doesn't know how to use it, and the other part is that her emotions are haywires right now, and that's not helping the magic.
I don't even know what to say about this scene anymore because it's so good, but it speaks for itself in a way.
Yeah, I have just a couple things. So we'll start with Raelle floating. Note that when she's floating in real life, it's the Lesbian Jesus light. Then when we cut into the memory,
it's Scylla's light.
It's blue, which is Scylla's light. So that whole scene was orchestrated by Scylla. So that's why it's Scylla's light. And like in the pilot, there's a final scene of them. It's a very, very wide scene. They're in the middle. And the part of the woods that they're in is blue light, which is Scylla's light. But then outside of it is the gold light, which is pretty cool. So go back and look at that. So it's like Raelle. It's like Scylla's intercutting into Raelle's world is kind of what that is. But here it's just Raelle by herself drowning in her own light. And that's not where she wants to be right now. She wants to be in the blue light with Scylla. So it's very heartbreaking about that.
Thanks for punching me all over again.
Yeah, this whole episode punches you in everywhere and just leaves you for dead. But to go on a different note, at the very beginning of the scene, when woman whose name we never get is going on about the flying stuff, and they realize they're about to start doing flying, Libba looks at Abigail like she's worried that Abigail's going to get hurt or she wants to hug her or something. Go back and watch that. It happens.
The only time I noticed Libba was when she was staring at Raelle from the ground. And I'm so sad that I have missed that part where she looks at Abigail.
It's right at the beginning. Go back and watch it. And last piece. So Raelle, like we mentioned, falls from a much greater distance than the OG salva scene. Does she go to the infirmary? Because in the first episode, she falls from like a quarter of the height and they send her to the infirmary. Does she go to the infirmary? Like that, she just fell like 10 feet in the air. Whatever. No one cares. I can't make sense of these scenes.
Anacostia the hater isn't there, so
it's a mess. Whatever.
It's a hot mess.
Yeah, I guess flying instructor's like, walk it off, you'll be fine.
Yeah, she has no time for this. She has other things to do.
She got like 20 cadets to get through. Like, Raelle, walk it off.
She got 20 cadets, and then she's got to go back to her little barracks and watch Agatha Christie.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just in my brain.
Yeah. Anyway. But while that's all happening, meanwhile, back at the morgue, where again, there's no blue lights. We're not going to see Scylla. It's the sterile light. We have Isadora presenting all the vocal cords and her ear specimens to Alder after the necros finished their autopsies. Side note about this. On the lab counter, where there's all these specimens, we see multiple beakers with like plants growing out of them. So like Isadora literally has experiments everywhere. I love it. Just little plants in her beakers. It's so cute. But while this is happening, Isadora's like, look at all of my science. And Alder just like cuts to the chase. And she's like, well, how did we not know about any of these witches? Like, what the hell? And Petra, all sassy with her big witch energy, is like, the spree knew. Being like, Alder, how could you not know? What the hell? And they start getting into like a big witch energy staring contest, but Isadora's like, hey, back to the science. I don't care about this politics stuff. She's like, listen, they're obviously connected to the Bellwether matriline. It was lost to time because of dodging or intermarriage with civilians, which is why the mark is so faint. So question. Now that we learn that if witches breed with witches, they get the shiny Bellwether mark like Petra. If they intermarry with civilians, it fades. Does this mean Raelle's mark is fainter compared to wild-type witches, is my question, because her dad is not a witch.
I think that it's probably, if it is more faint, it's barely more faint because it's like a first generation dilution of witch blood.
Right.
So it's not as if it was 4 or 5 generations of intermarriage. So I think that you get to a point where all of the witch traits leave the line, but these people were probably on the 4th or 5th generation out. So I think Raelle's might be slightly less noticeable, but it's still there in a very similar intensity to everyone else's who's a more. Because you got to think, how many of these people are actually. There's got to be more than Raelle who are the product of a civilian and a witch.
Right. Exactly. That is the question. We'll never see Raelle's mark, so it's just a question.
We won't. That would be.
But you have to imagine, like, it has to be to some degree fainter because of this. So compared to wild type,
At least we know Scylla made that shit shiny as hell.
Yeah, I mean, it's shiny, but if you compared Raelle's mark to Mama Collar, like, would it be different? Is my question. So it's interesting to think about. And anyway, so while they're having this conversation, Petra, when Isadora gives this line where she's like, oh, because of the interbreeding, Petra gives Isadora the side eye, like, how dare you suggest that Bellwethers would mixed blood? Like, it's this prejudiced look she gives her, and it's so weird. But anyway, Isadora's like, well, they probably didn't know they were witches, so nobody knew. So that's why we didn't know about them. And then they start reiterating the spree stuff where they're like, well, I can't believe that the spree doesn't kill witches. What the hell? And then Petra just cuts the crap and just says, Sarah, first naming General Alder. And she's like, they are deliberately targeting my family. This is personal. They tried to kill Abigail once. They could do it again. So now we get to see like Petra, why Petra's so afraid of all of this, because she's afraid they're coming after Abigail. And that's, you know, her pride and joy. That's the legacy of the Bellwethers. Everything they've all worked for is about to get like destroyed by all of this. So Petra's like reeling. And Sarah says, don't worry. The army will keep Abigail safe, which is like an empty platitude. And Petra doesn't seem to buy this shit. She's like, yeah, you're going to keep my daughter safe? I don't know about this. So you start seeing the coup wheels turning in her head. And then Sarah says something that kind of sets up the rest of the season, where she says, well, gang, as far as the public knows, 17 civilians were killed by the spree. So let's just let everyone keep thinking that while we figure this shit out, and we'll release the truth when the time is right. And so this is like the start of Sarah, or at least us seeing Sarah's deliberate spree cover-ups. Which ends up having consequences. So she's like, hey, the spree's the villain in everybody's eyes. Let's just let them think it's the spree, and we'll keep this witch genocide shit to ourselves. And that ends up having big major consequences down the road. But I can kind of see it from Alder's perspective, because the point is, like, they're trying to, you know, protect other witches while they kind of like keep this internally and figure this out. But yeah, this ends up having consequences. And then Sarah just witch mic drops and leave with the biddies, and that's the end of the scene.
I have such mixed feelings on her saying that they're going to release the information at a later date, because I don't feel like she really has much of an intention of doing that.
No.
For one, and for another thing, I feel like supposedly you're doing this to protect other witches, but at the same time, shouldn't other witches be alerted to the fact that there's someone they think the spree killing off people who are not known to be part of the witch community? You would think, but I can see how that would raise a panic and be a lot of concern over, oh my God, there could be witches anywhere. But at the same time, the way you prevent things is to take preventative measures rather than cover it up and then later on say, oopsie.
Yeah. And so I think this really highlights where Sarah's head's at with all of this, because we saw what you just said in Beltane, remember, where they're like, well, the spree could attack us. And she's like, no, we need to do this. This is our tradition. This is how we get powerful. So you start to see that Sarah is like concerned less with safety, and it's more about power. Because I think the other piece with this too is if she admits, or they announce, all these witches are being targeted and we didn't know they were witches. It makes them look incompetent and it makes them look weak and like they have no control over this fight with the spree. And we saw in the beginning where President Wade is like, hey, you're not beating the spree. Why aren't you beating the spree? Shouldn't you be beating the spree? Do I need to get a human army? It makes Sarah look weak. And so to admit all of this would almost like make her look incompetent. And there's already controversy with her still being in power. So I think there's multiple motives with Sarah right now to be like, let's just let them think it's the spree. Everyone already hates the spree. We also don't know who's really doing this if it's not the spree. So let's let them think that. And they don't need to know we're incompetent. We'll figure it out in the background. So it's a very like political maneuver that she's doing here, but it has major consequences by just going this like ignorance route.
I feel like Sarah's always trying to play the long game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Without any kind of acknowledgement of how that's even going to affect like a middle term game.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. She has 300 years of experience, so she has a very unique perspective where she can have longitudinal thinking beyond like a generation.
She sees things in decades rather than
centuries.
Than in
centuries.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's part of it. But like, again, all these things are coming to a head right now in the world, and I don't think Sarah's acknowledging that, and that's going to be there's going to be consequences to that.
It's going to come back to bite her.
Yeah.
So, and everyone else.
Exactly. So that's a very important piece of that scene, other than Isadora's plants and the beakers.
I love
it.
I want beakers with plants in them now. I'm going to get beakers and put air plants in them just in honor of Isadora.
It's so cute. It's such an Isadora thing.
It so is. Little mushrooms. I want little mushrooms.
Yes.
But the next scene is Raelle be pissed off.
Yeah.
Raelle confronting Anacostia about if they're even looking for Scylla. And she's getting straight up in Anacostia's face, which is usually really not a great idea.
No, so much big witch energy here.
Yes, but Anacostia's kind of letting her do it. And you can see little flickers of sympathy in Anacostia's face while this is going on. But she just is shutting it down. There's an investigation in progress. That's not good enough for Raelle. And she's just lays it out there. I know you hate her, but she could still be alive. And Anacostia said, hate, like, whatever, that doesn't have anything to do with it. It is just obvious that she's letting Raelle get out all of this frustration out over this because she could just kind of walk away or somehow restrict Raelle because she's asking all these questions. Mm-hmm. So she promises that they're investigating every angle and she's not been found. Raelle, who's shaking at this point, she turns and gets super emotional and starts screaming. And that's when your body just goes rigid and it just hits you so hard. Taylor's screaming, you're acting like I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. So we're seeing, like we mentioned earlier, her putting all these pieces together and it's not making sense. She's at her wit's end, screaming at Anacostia that she knows something's going on that no one's telling her. And she wants her to know that. She just lets it all out all of a sudden. And Anacostia raises her voice back to Raelle, but not nearly as loud, and tells her that the investigation is above her pay grade and to leave it to them, and then she walks away. So I believe there's also, like, there's a fight within Tally about whether this is a good idea to keep this information and whether she's betraying Raelle or not. I don't think Anacostia is having the same fight within herself, but I think she is feeling sympathy for Raelle.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Because, I mean, again, Anacostia is Sarah's girl. She's doing what she's supposed to do. This is an army matter. She's being, army.
She's
above
being
your
army.
pay grade. But when Raelle delivers the hysterical line, you're acting like I'm crazy, you see this strikes a nerve with Anacostia and she like gulps. Like she feels the things that we're feeling watching Raelle have this breakdown. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that Anacostia feels human sympathy towards Raelle, but unlike Tally, she's like, I understand this is for the greater good. You can't know this no matter how much it damages you.
She's been doing this a lot longer than any of these girls as well. She's seen a lot more than them. And so she's used to dealing with stuff not quite like this probably, but in the same vein. But the way that Raelle has tears in her eyes but doesn't shed them, the hovering tears, that's worse than her outright bawling to me.
Yeah. And I have to note too, in the scene, when Raelle flips on the big witch energy and starts going after Anacostia, I love how they placed them, because they're on this little hill and Raelle is on kind of the top of the hill. So it's like she has the high ground here, because technically she has the moral high ground because she's right, like symbolically. And she's literally talking down to Mom and Costia while they're having this conversation. So it's very interesting, and I love the way they did that.
I agree. I was going to say the way that they're placed in between those trees in that little area. Super cool.
It is. But Raelle's right, but Mama Costia gives her no ground. She's like, get over it. Sorry. Not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry, but, this is... And it is like... Raelle's concerned with her own personal feelings and with her heart, and Anacostia knows that in this moment, that's not what matters in the overall picture, so...
No. Cool.
Except to us.
We're with Raelle in this scene.
We're with Raelle.
Tears hovering.
Just tell her. No,
no, she can't. All right, and that takes us over to Cersei Barracks, where Abigail is packing. Like, what is she doing?
Where are you going, girl?
Right, what is she doing? She's just like folding clothes. I don't even know what she's doing. She looks like a zombie folding clothes.
Is it laundry day?
Yeah, maybe. Because, like, I was like, maybe it's from the wedding, but, like, they didn't bring clothes. I don't know. Anyway, so she's zombie packing or whatever. And Tally's in the room pressing her to talk, because Tally is an extrovert, needs to talk about her feelings. So she's like, talk about your feelings, Abigail. And eventually she gives up and she's like, whatever, don't talk to me, but you can't keep pretending nothing's wrong, because Tally's worried about everybody, but she can't talk to Raelle because she's the reason Raelle is having a breakdown. So she's like extra clinging on to Abigail this whole episode. And Abigail's like, I'm not pretending, I'm actually fine. But, like, her face just looks anything but fine.
Not fine.
No, like, she's clearly scared and just fracturing. She's grappling with all this stuff. And Tally vocalizes that. She says, no one can go through what you just went through and be fine. And Abigail gives the Bellwether propaganda of, it's what soldiers do every day. But I think that's something, again, that was bred into Abigail from the Bellwether stuff, but this is Abigail's first, like, quote-unquote war experience. Mm-hmm. And so she's facing the reality of all this stuff she's been told. This is just what happens. This is what you're going to deal with. Like, but now she's experiencing it, and I think she feels like her body's betraying her, because she's really experiencing all this PTSD, and she wasn't expecting it to really, like, override everything the way it is. Like, her brain is screaming to her, like, brush it off, soldier, like, you'll be fine. But her body's like, no, I'm scared, and I don't know how to handle all of this. So she's having this internal war that's waging, and I don't think she can right now admit it out loud, because to admit it out loud is to admit that, she's lesser than all the other Bellwethers, that she's failing at dealing with this, So just, it's awful. Like, poor Abigail, she's like, how can I not handle this brawl with the spree like my mom did, and my mom's fine? Like, why am I not fine? But she's too afraid to vocalize that out loud. It's very sad.
It's very sad. And
yeah.
She snaps at Tally again.
She sure does.
Exchange. And remember that when she snapped at Raelle about her country shit?
Yeah, she does.
She uses the same tactic on Tally with her NorCal. What did she say? NorCal bullshit or something? She
says
like
your
that?
Weepy peepy NorCal nonsense. And Tally is like, don't talk to me like that.
Yeah, I'm so here for Tally with a backbone.
Big witch energy Tally shuts that shit down. Because she sees through the bullshit. She's like, you're obviously not fine. but like stop being a soldier for 5 minutes and you'll see you're a mess. That's what triggers Abigail, because that's vocalizing Abigail's like Abigail's reality that she is too afraid to deal with right now. And Tally too, to her credit, has her own shit going on that she can't talk about, and she's trying to put on this like very stoic, supportive face for Abigail because they're all emotionally traumatized and losing their shit, and she can't be around Raelle. So I think she's really clinging to Abigail to like, if I can make Abigail fine, I'll be fine, and then maybe Raelle will be fine.
Exactly.
But
where Abigail's in a place where she's coming to grips with her, okay, maybe things won't be fine and I can't just move on.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not as good as everyone else is. Like, I'm not handling this the way that I'm supposed to. What the fuck?
Yeah, and Abigail kind of started this internal, like, well, who am I? Existential crisis the last episode, and this compounds it and makes it so much worse. But to Abigail's credit, even though she lashed out at Tally, she does apologize to Tally. She's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she totally backs down. And then she gives a little explanation.
Yeah, she says, I'm a beehive right now, don't poke me. Kind of thing. She's like, I'm not you, Tally. I don't want to just talk about my feelings. I need to process my feelings before we talk. And I just want to note with Abigail, and I forgot to mention this in the last scene, but like, her and Raelle both look like they haven't slept since the wedding. Their cheeks are very hollow. They have bags under their eyes. Like, you can see the two of them are just, it's physically taking a toll on the two of them. And yeah, they're just at their wits' end, like you said earlier.
Raelle looks even worse.
No, Raelle looks like she's dying, like actually dying.
Like that scene where, oh God, there's one scene where the light hits her face.
We'll get there.
We
haven't got there yet.
Oh, Jesus
Yeah,
Christmas.
that's the apex of her looking horrible. But it's affecting Abigail too, like, which is, very un-Abigail-like. Before Abigail and Tally can kind of keep going, there's a knock at the door, and some underling shows up to collect Abigail to see Mama Bellwether. And before she leaves, Abigail does thank Tally. Like, so despite being poked and prodded by Tally, she's like, I get what you're doing, and thank you, and leaves. So it's growth for Abigail. Even in this traumatizing experience, you can see that Abigail's kind of like growing in her small way.
And I think the traumatizing experience is even helping her grow.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, you are correct.
But that gets us into Petra's office, I guess. Is this her office? Is this where she hangs out?
I think it's her office, because the underling's like, we're going to take you to the, well, she says administrative office. So maybe it's just like a temporary office when she's not in the field.
It has to be, because there's that one scene in a different episode where Abigail is like, what are you doing here?
Right, exactly. So it's got to be like a temporary office for like officers who are on the base for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unlike Alder's permanent war office with the Biddy wrist game.
With the giant picture of herself.
Yeah, she's like, this is mine. Here are my giant pictures.
Exactly.
You could have this closet, Petra.
And here are my Biddy's clue tables. Or risk tables.
They're board games for the Biddies.
They probably play Connect 4 too.
They play so many things. I love them.
So Petra assigns a very fine soldier to be Abigail's bodyguard, which is absolutely poking the beehive.
Yes, Bridie, can you be my bodyguard instead?
Right? Seriously, I will take that.
Yes.
But for Abigail, it's like having a babysitter and being told you're not strong enough.
Yeah, she feels like a child, like this lesser person, like you're a child that needs a babysitter.
Yeah, she's chafing at the suggestion that she needs a bodyguard.
Yeah.
Because she's not seeing it through the same light that Petra is, who's just trying to protect Abigail because Abigail is her daughter and the last bellwether of childbearing age. So
just like Tally and Raelle.
Yes, exactly. She's going on about how enough people are staring at her and she doesn't want to call any more attention to herself. She doesn't want to stick out anymore as someone who is having trouble. No one can see Abigail have trouble or fail. So she's really not excited about this, but Petra's not taking no for an answer and tells her to use this time to learn from her bodyguard, which is a good piece of advice, even though it's not going to sink in for Abigail. she's just gonna have to experience it. But Bridie is the bodyguard and a very cool looking, like, seriously, I want to hang out with Bridie.
For real.
She looks super cool, but she's got this eye patch going on. So obviously she has an eye situation that was not fixed by a fixer. And we'll get a little more on that later. But after Petra is like, just deal with it, they leave the office and Abigail is taking all of the beehive poking out on Bridie at this point. Just basically, she has to tell her that, hey, I'm a badass. I don't need you. And this is ridiculous. But none of that is relevant. And Bridie's not saying anything because she's not dumb. She knows what's going on.
Also, she's like, I have orders from Petra Bellwether.
Yeah.
I'm obviously not going to say no to her.
I'm obviously not going anywhere, but I'm going to let you get this out.
Right. She's like, go ahead, toss your feelings out.
Toss your feelings out. I'll just sit here and absorb.
Yeah.
So we have 3 other cadets go by and they're whispering, looking at Abigail, because that's how they do.
Mm-hmm.
And then Abigail turns around and blames that on Bridie as well. Even though I'm pretty sure those girls would have been whispering about you anyway, Abigail.
Yeah. No one cares. I can't make sense of these scenes.
Anacostia the hater isn't there,
I know.
So
it's a mess. Whatever.
It's a hot mess.
Yeah, I guess flying instructor's like, walk it off, you'll be fine.
Yeah, she has no time for this. She has other things to do.
She got like 20 cadets to get through. Like, Raelle, walk it off.
She's got 20 cadets, and then she's got to go back to her little barracks and watch Agatha Christie.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's just in my brain.
Yeah. Anyway, but while that's all happening, meanwhile, back at the morgue, where again, there's no blue lights. We're not going to see Scylla. It's the sterile light. We have Isadora presenting all the vocal cords and her ear specimens to Alder after the necros finished their autopsies. Side note about this. On the lab counter, where there's all these specimens, we see multiple beakers with like plants growing out of them. So like Isadora literally has experiments everywhere. I love it. Just little plants in her beakers. It's so cute. But while this is happening, Isadora's like, look at all of my science. And Alder just like cuts to the chase. And she's like, well, how did we not know about any of these witches? Like, what the hell? And Petra, all sassy with her big witch energy, is like, the spree knew. Being like, Alder, how could you not know? What the hell? And they start getting into like a big witch energy staring contest, but Isadora's like, hey, back to the science. I don't care about this politics stuff. She's like, listen, they're obviously connected to the Bellwether matriline. It was lost to time because of dodging or intermarriage with civilians, which is why the mark is so faint. So question. Now that we learn that if witches breed with witches, they get the shiny Bellwether mark like Petra. If they intermarry with civilians, it fades. Does this mean Raelle's mark is fainter compared to wild-type witches, is my question, because her dad is not a witch.
I think that it's probably, if it is more faint, it's barely more faint because it's like a first-generation dilution of witch blood.
Right.
So it's not as if it was 4 or 5 generations of intermarriage. So I think that you get to a point where all of the witch traits leave the line, but these people were probably on the 4th or 5th generation out. So I think Raelle's might be slightly less noticeable, but it's still there in a very similar intensity to everyone else's who's a more... Because you got to think, how many of these people are actually... There's got to be more than Raelle who are the product of a civilian and a witch.
Right. Exactly. That is the question. We'll never see Raelle's mark, so it's just a question.
We won't. That would be...
But you have to imagine, like, it has to be to some degree fainter because of this. So, compared to wild type.
At least we know Scylla made that shit shiny as hell.
Yeah, I mean, it's shiny, but if you compared Raelle's mark to Mama Collar, like, would it be different, is my question. So, it's interesting to think about. And anyway, so while they're having this conversation, Petra, when Isadora gives this line where she's like, oh, because of the interbreeding, Petra gives Isadora the side eye, like, how dare you suggest that Bellwethers would mixed blood? Like, it's this prejudiced look she gives her, and it's so weird. But anyway, Isadora's like, well, they probably didn't know there were witches, so nobody knew, so that's why we didn't know about them. And then they start reiterating the spree stuff, where they're like, well, I can't believe that the spree doesn't kill witches, what the hell? And then Petra just cuts the crap and just says, Sarah, first naming General Alder. And she's like, they are deliberately targeting my family. This is personal. They tried to kill Abigail once. They could do it again. So now we get to see like Petra, why Petra's so afraid of all of this, because she's afraid they're coming after Abigail. And that's, you know, her pride and joy. That's the legacy of the Bellwethers. Everything they've all worked for is about to get like destroyed by all of this. So Petra's like reeling. And Sarah says, don't worry. The army will keep Abigail safe, which is like an empty platitude. And Petra doesn't seem to buy this shit. She's like, yeah, you're going to keep my daughter safe? I don't know about this. So you start seeing the coup wheels turning in her head. And then Sarah says something that kind of sets up the rest of the season, where she says, well, gang, as far as the public knows, 17 civilians were killed by the spree. So let's just let everyone keep thinking that while we figure this shit out, and we'll release the truth when the time is right. And so this is like the start of Sarah, or at least us seeing Sarah's deliberate spree cover-ups, which ends up having consequences. So she's like, hey, the spree's the villain in everybody's eyes. Let's just let them think it's the spree, and we'll keep this witch genocide shit to ourselves. And that ends up having big major consequences down the road. But I can kind of see it from Alder's perspective, because the point is like they're trying to, you know, protect other witches while they kind of like keep this internally and figure this out. But yeah, this ends up having consequences. And then Sarah just witch mic drops and leave with the biddies, and that's the end of the scene.
I have such mixed feelings on her saying that they're going to release the information at a later date, because I don't feel like she really has much of an intention of doing that.
No.
For one, and for another thing, I feel like supposedly you're doing this to protect other witches, but at the same time, shouldn't other witches be alerted to the fact that there's someone they think the spree killing off people who are not known to be part of the witch community? You would think, but I can see how that would raise a panic and be a lot of concern over, oh my god, there could be witches anywhere. But at the same time, the way you prevent things is to take preventative measures rather than cover it up and then later on say, oopsie.
Yeah. And so I think this really highlights where Sarah's head's at with all of this, because we saw what you just said in Beltane, remember, where they're like, well, the spree could attack us. And she's like, no, we need to do this. This is our tradition. This is how we get powerful. So you start to see that Sarah is like concerned less with safety, and it's more about power. Because I think the other piece with this too is if she admits, or they announce, all these witches are being targeted and we didn't know they were witches, it makes them look incompetent, and it makes them look weak and like they have no control over this fight with the spree. And we saw in the beginning where President Wade is like, hey, you're not beating the spree. Why aren't you beating the spree? Shouldn't you be beating the spree? Do I need to get a human army? It makes Sarah look weak. And so to admit all of this would almost like make her look incompetent. And there's already controversy with her still being in power. So I think there's multiple motives with Sarah right now to be like, let's just let them think it's the spree. Everyone already hates the spree. We also don't know who's really doing this if it's not the spree. So let's let them think that. And they don't need to know we're incompetent. We'll figure it out in the background. So it's a very like political maneuver that she's doing here, but it has major consequences by just going this like ignorance route.
I feel like Sarah's always trying to play the long game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Without any kind of acknowledgement of how that's even going to affect like a middle term game.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. She has 300 years of experience, so she has a very unique perspective where she can have longitudinal thinking beyond like a generation.
She sees things in decades rather than
centuries.
In
centuries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's part of it. But like, again, all these things are coming to a head right now in the world, and I don't think Sarah's acknowledging that, and that's going to be there's going to be consequences to
It's going to
that.
come back to bite her.
Yeah. So,
and everyone else.
And everyone else, exactly. So that's a very important piece of that scene, other than Isadora's plants and the beakers.
I love
it.
I want beakers with plants in them now. I'm going to get beakers and put air plants in them just in honor of Isadora.
It's so cute. It's such an Isadora thing.
It so is. Little mushrooms. I want little mushrooms.
Yes.
But the next scene is Raelle be pissed off.
Yeah.
Raelle confronting Anacostia about if they're even looking for Scylla. And she's getting straight up in Anacostia's face, which is usually really not a great idea.
No, so much big witch energy here.
Yes, but Anacostia's kind of letting her do it. And you can see little flickers of sympathy in Anacostia's face while this is going on. But she just is shutting it down. There's an investigation in progress. That's not good enough for Raelle. And she's just lays it out there. I know you hate her, but she could still be alive. And Anacostia said, hate, like, whatever, that doesn't have anything to do with it. And it's just obvious that she's letting Raelle get out all of this frustration out over this, because she could just kind of walk away or somehow restrict Raelle because she's asking all these questions. Mm-hmm. So she promises that they're investigating every angle and she's not been found. Raelle, who's shaking at this point, she turns and gets super emotional and starts screaming. And that's when your body just goes rigid and it just hits you so hard. Taylor's screaming, "You're acting like I'm crazy. I'm not crazy." So we're seeing, like we mentioned earlier, her putting all these pieces together and it's not making sense. She's at her wit's end, screaming at Anacostia that she knows something's going on that no one's telling her, and she wants her to know that. She just lets it all out all of a sudden. And Anacostia raises her voice back to Raelle, but not nearly as loud, and tells her that the investigation is above her pay grade and to leave it to them, and then she walks away. So I believe there's also, like, there's a fight within Tally about whether this is a good idea to keep this information and whether she's betraying Raelle or not. I don't think Anacostia is having the same fight within herself, but I think she is feeling sympathy for Raelle.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Because, I mean, again, Anacostia is Sarah's girl. She's doing what she's supposed to do. This is an army matter. She's being, army.
She's
above
being
your pay
army.
grade. But when Raelle delivers the hysterical line, "You're acting like I'm crazy," you see this strikes a nerve with Anacostia, and she like gulps. Like she feels the things that we're feeling watching Raelle have this breakdown. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that Anacostia feels human sympathy towards Raelle, but unlike Tally, she's like, I understand this is for the greater good. You can't know this no matter how much it damages you.
She's been doing this a lot longer than any of these girls as well. She's seen a lot more than them. And so she's used to dealing with stuff not quite like this probably, but in the same vein. But the way that Raelle has tears in her eyes but doesn't shed them. The hovering tears. That's worse than her outright bawling to me.
Yeah. And I have to note, too, in the scene, when Raelle flips on the big witch energy and starts going after Anacostia, I love how they placed them. Because they're on this little hill. And Raelle is on kind of the top of the hill. So it's like she has the high ground here. Because technically she has the moral high ground because she's right, like symbolically. And she's literally talking down to Mom and Costia while they're having this conversation. So it's very interesting, and I love the way they did that.
I agree. I was going to say the way that they're placed in between those trees in that little area. Super cool.
It is. But Raelle's right, but Mama Costia gives her no ground. She's like, get over it. Sorry. Not sorry.
sorry, not sorry, but, this is, and it is like, Raelle's concerned with her own personal feelings and with her heart, and Anacostia knows that in this moment, that's not what matters in the overall picture, so.
No. Cool.
Except to us.
Except to us. We're with Raelle in this scene.
We're with Raelle.
Tears hovering.
Just tell her. No, I'm just
kidding. No, she can't. All right, and that takes us over to Cersei Barracks, where Abigail is packing. Like, what is she doing?
Where are you going, girl?
Right, what is she doing? She's just like folding clothes. I don't even know what she's doing. She looks like a zombie folding clothes.
Is it laundry day?
Yeah, maybe. Because, like, I was like, maybe it's from the wedding, but, like, they didn't bring clothes. I don't know. Anyway, so she's zombie packing or whatever. And Tally's in the room pressing her to talk because Tally is an extrovert and needs to talk about her feelings. So she's like, talk about your feelings, Abigail. And eventually she gives up and she's like, whatever, don't talk to me. But you can't keep pretending nothing's wrong because Tally's worried about everybody, but she can't talk to Raelle because she's the reason Raelle is having a breakdown. So she's like extra clinging onto Abigail this whole episode. And Abigail's like, I'm not pretending. I'm actually fine. But, like, her face just looks anything but fine.
Not fine.
No, like, she's clearly scared and just fracturing. She's grappling with all this stuff. And Tally vocalizes that. She says, no one can go through what you just went through and be fine. And Abigail gives the Bellwether propaganda of, it's what soldiers do every day. But I think that's something, again, that was bred into Abigail from the Bellwether stuff, but this is Abigail's first, like, quote-unquote war experience. Mm-hmm. And so she's facing the reality of all this stuff she's been told. This is just what happens. This is what you're going to deal with. Like, but now she's experiencing it, and I think she feels like her body's betraying her because she's really experiencing all this PTSD, and she wasn't expecting it to really, like, override everything the way it is. Like, her brain is screaming to her, like, brush it off, soldier, like, you'll be fine. But her body's like, no, I'm scared and I don't know how to handle all of this. So she's having this internal war that's waging, and I don't think she can right now admit it out loud, because to admit it out loud is to admit that, she's lesser than all the other Bellwethers, that she's failing at dealing with this, So it just is awful. Like poor Abigail, she's like, how can I not handle this brawl with the spree like my mom did, and my mom's fine? Like, why am I not fine? But she's too afraid to vocalize that out loud. It's very sad.
It's very sad. And
yeah.
She snaps at Tally again.
She sure does.
Exchange. And remember that when she snapped at Raelle about her country shit?
Yeah, she does.
She uses the same tactic on Tally with her NorCal. What did she say? NorCal bullshit or something? She
says
like
your
that?
Weepy peepy NorCal nonsense. And Tally is like, don't talk to me like that.
Yeah, I'm so here for Tally with a backbone.
Big witch energy Tally shuts that shit down. Because she sees through the bullshit. She's like, you're obviously not fine. But, like, stop being a soldier for 5 minutes and you'll see you're a mess. That's what triggers Abigail, because that's vocalizing Abigail's, like, Abigail's reality that she is too afraid to deal with right now. And Tally, too, to her credit, has her own shit going on that she can't talk about. And she's trying to put on this, like, very stoic, supportive face for Abigail, because they're all emotionally traumatized and losing their shit. And she can't be around Raelle. So I think she's really clinging to Abigail to, like, if I can make Abigail fine, I'll be fine. And then maybe Raelle will be fine.
Exactly.
But
where Abigail's in a place where she's coming to grips with her, okay, maybe things won't be fine and I can't just move on.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not as good as everyone else is. Like, I'm not handling this the way that I'm supposed to. What the fuck?
Yeah, and Abigail kind of started this internal, like, well, who am I? Existential crisis the last episode, and this compounds it and makes it so much worse. But to Abigail's credit, even though she lashed out at Tally, she does apologize to Tally. She's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she totally backs down. And then she gives a little explanation.
Yeah, she says, I'm a beehive right now, don't poke me. Kind of thing. She's like, I'm not you, Tally. I don't want to just talk about my feelings. I need to process my feelings before we talk. And I just want to note with Abigail, and I forgot to mention this in the last scene, but, like, Her and Raelle both look like they haven't slept since the wedding. Their cheeks are very hollow. They have bags under their eyes. Like, you can see the two of them are just, it's physically taking a toll on the two of them. And yeah, they're just at their wits' end, like you said earlier.
Raelle looks even worse.
No, Raelle looks like she's dying, like actually dying.
Like that scene where, oh God, there's one scene where the light hits her face.
We'll get there.
And
we
it's
haven't got
really,
there yet.
Oh, Jesus
Yeah,
Christmas.
that's the apex of her looking horrible. But it's affecting Abigail too, like, which is, very un-Abigail-like. Before Abigail and Tally can kind of keep going, there's a knock at the door, and some underling shows up to collect Abigail to see Mama Bellwether. And before she leaves, Abigail does thank Tally. Like, so despite being poked and prodded by Tally, she's like, I get what you're doing, and thank you, and leaves. So it's growth for Abigail. Even in this traumatizing experience, you can see that Abigail's kind of like growing in her small way.
And I think the traumatizing experience is even helping her grow.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, you are correct.
But that gets us into Petra's office, I guess. Is this her office? Is this just where she hangs out?
I think it's her office, because the underlings, like, we're going to take you to the, well, she says administrative office. So maybe it's just like a temporary office when she's not in the field.
It has to be, because there's that one scene in a different episode where Abigail is like, what are you doing here?
Right, exactly. So it's got to be like a temporary office for like officers who are on the base for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unlike Alder's permanent war office with the Biddy wrist game.
With the giant picture of herself.
Yeah, she's like, this is mine. Here are my giant pictures.
Exactly.
You could have this closet, Petra.
And here are my Biddy's clue tables. Or risk tables.
They're board games for the Biddies.
They probably play Connect 4 too.
They play so many things. I love them.
So Petra assigns a very fine soldier to be Abigail's bodyguard, which is absolutely poking the beehive.
Yes, Bridie, can you be my bodyguard instead?
Right? Seriously, I will take that.
Yes.
But for Abigail, it's like having a babysitter and being told you're not strong enough.
Yeah, she feels like a child, like this lesser person, like you're a child that needs a babysitter.
Yeah, she's chafing at the suggestion that she needs a bodyguard.
Yeah.
Because she's not seeing it through the same light that Petra is, who's just trying to protect Abigail because Abigail is her daughter and the last Bellwether of childbearing age. So
just like Tally and Raelle.
Yes, exactly. She's going on about how enough people are staring at her and she doesn't want to call any more attention to herself. She doesn't want to stick out anymore as someone who is having trouble. No one can see Abigail have trouble or fail. So she's really not excited about this, but Petra's not taking no for an answer and tells her to use this time to learn from her bodyguard, which is a good piece of advice, even though it's not going to sink in for Abigail. She's just going to have to experience it. But Bridie is the bodyguard and a very cool looking, like, seriously, I want to hang out with Bridie.
For real.
She looks super cool, but she's got this eye patch going on. So obviously she has an eye situation that was not fixed by a fixer. And we'll get a little more on that later. But after Petra is like, just deal with it, they leave the office and Abigail is taking all of the beehive poking out on Bridie at this point. Just basically she has to tell her that, hey, I'm a badass. I don't need you. And this is ridiculous. But none of that is relevant. And Bridie's not saying anything because she's not dumb. She knows what's going on.
Also, she's like, I have orders from Petra Bellwether.
Yeah.
I'm obviously not going to say no to her.
I'm obviously not going anywhere, but I'm going to let you get this out.
Right. She's like, go ahead. Toss your feelings out.
Toss your feelings out. I'll just sit here and absorb.
Yeah.
So we have 3 other cadets go by and they're whispering, looking at Abigail because that's how they do.
Mm-hmm.
And then Abigail turns around and blinks out on Bridie as well. Even though I'm pretty sure those girls would have been whispering about you anyway, Abigail.
Yeah.
Because all the shit that went down.
Mm-hmm.
But that just ticks Abigail off even more that Bridie doesn't answer. And she yells, "Do you even talk?" But this whole time, Abigail's been twirling this stick. She's just
what the
has a random stick she's twirling.
What is she doing?
Where did you pick that up? Like, I know it had to be like on the ground or something, but
we've never seen Abigail do that ever.
This prop
so
is
weird.
just for this scene.
It's like Raelle's satchel. We're like, listen, we need you to twirl a stick.
Yep.
I know it's weird, but just go with it. Go with it.
Just
actually.
go with it. Here's a stick. Twirl it around a little. So Abigail gets frustrated and tosses her stick.
Like Abigail does.
Like Abigail would. Bridie runs after it, launches off of a stump in this like super hardcore awesome move, and breaks the stick to pieces with her scourge while it's in midair.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she lands, she says, "When the time is right, I've been known to say a thing or two."
It's so epic.
It's so epic.
It's so
and even
epic.
Abigail is impressed.
I know. She does an eyebrow raise of acceptance. And she's like, okay, Bridie, we can be besties.
I see you.
It's so awesome. I'm glad I was carrying that stick awesome. I always carry.
Yeah, I'm glad I was carrying the stick so I could see you be a super awesome freaking ninja chick.
Yeah, that was
your
badass.
Scourge. It was badass.
Yeah.
Absolutely love Bridie from the moment they introduced her.
Me too. She's such a cool character. I love her. Everything about her is great.
There are like so many little characters that they introduce and I just love. And then we never...
This is why tertiary characters need off-screen spotlights, because they're all so awesome. Including flying lady we never get her name for. We should name her.
She's my tertiary character for what she's doing.
Oh, hell yeah! Oh, I cannot wait. Just chime in with her, whatever. She's awesome.
I'll add her at the end.
Yeah, that's what mine is. So we'll get there. We have to build for Isadora this episode. But before we move on to the Necro Lab, I just need to say quickly about Petra in the previous scene. What I think is interesting too about Petra is that we talk a lot about the Bellwethers and how they're just bred to understand, like, this is war, this is what happens, like, what do you want from me, keep going. But the way Petra is handling this Abigail thing is very, very different. Like, she's not brushing this off, like, oh, this is just war, this is what happens, we're Bellwethers, we get killed in war. Like, she's really taking this seriously, and hence, like, the Bridie thing. And so we start to see Petra kind of coming out of, like, the Bellwether training a little bit to be like, this is my daughter, I need to protect my daughter. Like, so it's a little bit of growth for Petra, too, I think is worth noting.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I agree.
All right. Now, we're going to go to Raelle, who's lurking under a tree, as she does, and tailing a couple of necros.
That's usually Scylla's move.
I know. Usually Scylla's lurking under a live oak, and then Raelle's like, oh, live oaks, there's Scylla, I found her. So Raelle is nostalgic and lurking under a live oak, looking for necros. And so she tails a couple of them to the lab. Because I guess she doesn't have the passcode, so she needs them to open the door so she can get in.
Only necros can make the stone disappear.
I guess. And so she's like, I've seen this shit before. Let me follow these women in lab coats, because they're obviously going to go to the lab. So she does. And her spy skills are good enough that she gets into the necro lab. And I'm like, will we get blue light? And we don't. We just get a creepy ass staircase and Raelle in a very sterile looking hallway. And she's walking around and then eventually creeps into this room with the door open. Put a pin in that. And she finds this super weird looking wall. It's like white and fuzzy and moving. And Raelle almost seems like drawn to this wall. And she's like, weird. This wall is the mycelium. And we will learn all about this thing for the rest of forever. So right now, we're Raelle, okay? We're confused and we're curious. What is this wall? So what do curious people do? They poke stuff. So Raelle goes up to the wall and pokes it. And the wall pokes her back. It makes a finger and pokes her. And at that moment, Isadora rushes into the room and she's like, get the fuck away from that. And then it rudely cuts to commercial. So that was fun. But Isadora is like, hey, random girl, did you just touch the wall? And Raelle doesn't really answer. She's like, she hides her finger behind her back and she's like, is it dangerous? And like, we get this close-up shot of like mycelium hyphase colonizing Raelle's finger. So what a whole ass liar she is. But Isadora's like, she like breathes a sigh of relief when she's like, okay, this girl didn't touch my big experiment. She's like, oh no, it's just leave it alone. We'll just put it like that. And Raelle's like, well, what is this thing? And Isadora has one of my favorite lines ever. She's like, well, let's just say it's part of a mushroom. So it has something to do with death because, like, call back to Scylla in the scene where she said mushrooms occupy the underworld. Nothing dead ever really dies. So this thing is part of a mushroom. It's part of the underworld. It's part of the circle of life. So put a pin in that. And after Isadora gives her this really weird line, Raelle's like, great. I guess being cryptic and vague is just a necro thing, so I'll just accept this answer. And let me cut to why I'm here. She's like, I'm looking for my girlfriend, Scylla Ramshorn. I'm Raelle. And what I love during this whole interaction is that Isadora's not like, what the fuck are you doing in my lab? She's just like, oh, are you interested in science? Do you want to learn about science? Until Raelle like gives this line, and then she's like, oh, okay. Well, Isadora's like, well, get the hell away from my experiment. Let's go to my office. Like, get away from the mycelium. And Raelle leaves, and Isadora does this like panicked look at the wall before she leaves. And the mycelium forms this really creepy face with blue eyes that almost look like Scylla's eyes. What the fuck was that all about?
I think it's supposed to be Raelle's face.
Is it Raelle's face?
I think it's supposed to be Raelle's face.
Interesting.
I'm not 100% sure
I'm
on
not
that,
either.
but the way that the eyes were and the shape of the face, it looked like a weird cross between Raelle and a baby.
Yeah, it looked like a porcelain doll with very blue eyes. Okay, maybe it is Raelle. It's like, haha, I did touch her, Isadora. Maybe that's what that was.
Yeah, so it's like another confirmation that Raelle did touch the mycelium, and it has taken her. It can take her form, I guess. I don't know.
I guess. I don't know. It was very creepy the first time I saw this. I was like, what the fuck is this?
It was super creepy. The CGI on that was
horrifying.
Can I not be close to that?
No. And like, yeah, I like your theory that was a Raelle face being like a signal to Isadora, because Isadora's definitely hung out with this thing. Let's not lie to ourselves. So
that's where she eats her lunch.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But remember that this room was wide open, which, like, Isadora, you would think that Isadora would have like the most high-tech security ever guarding that place, but the door was open and Raelle just
no one ever comes in there except for necros, and they all know not to go near the mycelium.
But why would she leave the door anyway? Whatever. So
because she knows none of her little students are going to go in
that's
there.
True.
Because
she has them all whipped.
And who the fuck wants to come in the necro lab anyway, except for Raelle? Nobody likes the necros.
No. But anyway, so that was that scene, and then they go.
This is like leaving your doors unlocked in the 90s.
I guess. I would just think Isadora. I mean, Isadora locked Porter's body in a room. I feel like she'd lock this door. But put a pin in that. We'll get to that anyway. But Isadora ushers Raelle out of the room. She's like, let's go to my office, because this isn't my office. Alder won't let me set up shop in here. We have to go to my other office. And they leave.
She would sit there and play music for the mycelium.
I think she does lots of things in there.
I don't know. Okay.
No, nothing weird. It's just Isadora stuff. She hangs out in there for sure.
She does hang out in there. Okay. We'll come back to that later. But on to Bridie part 2. She's they're sparring with Scourges, and Abigail is not doing very well. And Bridie keeps giving her advice, telling her not to let her guard down and that she should focus. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. You can see as the sparring goes on, Abigail is just breaking. She is completely breaking apart. And Bridie is definitely dodging everything Abigail throws at her until we get to the point where Abigail is at her wits' end and is asking, why can't I do this? I know how to do this. So she's saying, I can do this on a normal day. Like, this is the soldier shit that I do, but I can't do this right now. What is going on with me? And then she says a very important line, I let my guard down, didn't I? Which is a huge thing for Abigail to finally admit. And this is the scene where Abigail breaks down and finally lets all of that trauma come to the surface, at least for the first time. So she's bawling in Bridie's lap at this point and just blaming herself for Charvel's death. So we're on the guilt train with Abigail, the guilt trauma train. Those two seem to go together. Like,
for sure.
yeah. So from there,
Wait, before we move on. So Abigail, I just want to comment on like how they're fighting. So the dialogue when they're like scourge sparring is like Bridie says, she's like, hey, control first, then speed. Because you see that Abigail's just charging at her like this reckless loose cannon. So it's like a metaphor for like how her emotions are running wild right now. She's like, hey, control, control. But Abigail's like feels like she's spiraling out of control, and that's like the why can't I do this? I know how to do, like, again, it's like the mental training. It's like I know I should be mentally prepared for this thing I just went through, but I can't handle it. That's the other meaning of this whole scene. It's very, very sad what Abigail's grappling with, like you mentioned.
well, no one has control. Everyone's facing a problem with control. Tally doesn't have control over the information that she's holding. Raelle doesn't have control over where and what has happened to Scylla, and she can't make sense of any of the information that she has in her own mind. And Abigail can't control her own physical reactions to trauma.
Neither can Raelle.
and neither can Raelle. And Petra cannot control
the Bellwether
what's
attack.
happening to the Bellwethers.
Yeah, totally.
Alder can't control what's going on with the spree, quote unquote.
Bree's doing air quotes.
I'm doing like super hard, sarcastic air quotes.
Yeah.
In any case, no one has control in this episode, and there's your theme.
Absolutely.
But so we get to Tally running across the campus, if you will, and she sees Anacostia, and she runs up to her, and she wants to know what next steps are, because she knows that Scylla is spree and that Raelle loves her. So she's basically asking Mama Cassia, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? Tell me what to do. And Anacostia said there's nothing for you to tell, and that Tally did the right thing by reporting what she saw. But Tally comes back with, how can I lie to my sister? Like, how can she can't reconcile the betrayal of lying to Raelle with doing what's right by army standards. And Anacostia gives her the army line. You're a soldier protecting your nation. That's all you need to know right now. So Tally doesn't know exactly what's going on with the Scylla situation, obviously, but she knows enough that it's a problem for not just her, but for Anacostia in a way, because what if Tally just says something to Raelle finally? Tally's very unsatisfied with this entire conversation because she expected some kind of direction, some kind of mentorship out of this, when Anacostia is just sending her away with, keep doing what you're doing the right thing, and kind of a don't bother me about this again attitude. Which I think is a little short-sighted in a way, since she doesn't know what Tally's gonna do.
It's also like she gave her propaganda. She's like, hey, you're the soldier protecting the nation. That's all you gotta know. And usually Tally eats that shit up when it comes to the army. But this time you see her struggling with it. So this is Tally's big birth of a new era thing, where she's like, whoa, now I'm in the army stuff. And can I reconcile the moral gray of all of this? And so that's part of Tally's struggle, because she told Anacostia because she thought it was the right thing to do. And now she's dealing with the consequences of this because she's like, well, I see the consequences of how this affected Raelle and how this is killing her. And I am now in this position where I can't help my sister. Shouldn't I help my sister? Isn't that the right thing to do? So what is the right thing to do is Tally's existential crisis right now.
And I honestly don't think that when she found out that Scylla was Bree, that she had any thought of what she should do beyond telling an authority.
Exactly.
That this is what was going on. So she could not have foreseen any of this.
No. Exactly.
Again, we're back to no control.
No control. Exactly. Yeah. This is Tally dealing with the repercussions of doing what she thought was right in the moment and being like, well, shit.
And it's like, technically, yes, that is the right thing to do, but it's way more complicated than that.
Exactly.
Hey, welcome to Motherland Fort Salem.
Hey, welcome, where propaganda is not the answer. Yeah, it's more complicated than that.
There's no black and white here.
No black and white. Yeah, Tally. Yeah, and I think the other piece is that Tally grew up in like the matrifocal compound. So she was very sheltered also. And now she's in real life. And it's like, well, how do I deal with all this gray stuff? I've never been in this position. So everybody's in a new position. And it's growing pains, really harsh growing pains for all of them. It's very sad.
Tally's cinnamon roll self is being unraveled.
Yep.
Little by little.
Yeah, it is. So Tally is now on a journey herself, basically.
Now I want a cinnamon roll.
Yeah. Thanks, Tally. So from that, we go into a Lesbian Jesus light scene because this is a healing scene where Abigail and Bridie are just chilling under a tree. And Abigail had her cry in the last scene, so she looks a little less burdened because she totally needed that. But she says, like, the thing that triggered her PTSD outlash in the last scene was when Bridie struck her with the scourge, and it almost struck where she got the knife wound. And so that triggered Abigail. And so Bridie offers to, like, heal it because they're just sitting there. And I love the way she heals it because Bridie, like, just, like, waves her hand, doesn't murmur anything. And then everything is put back together. Her skin, her uniform. So somebody needs to teach Raelle this, like, now.
Yeah, Bridie's over here, big witch energy, healing everything.
Everything. Yeah, literally, she's the healer that was there to heal everybody in this episode. Go Bridie. But somebody teach Raelle this pronto because she doesn't need to take on burdens all the time. And after this, Abigail thanks her, and then she transitions into asking Bridie a personal question. And she asks, well, why isn't your eye fixed? I just saw you fix me. You have a wound. Why was the wound not fixed? And you see Bridie start to kind of get uncomfortable a little bit, but she tells Abigail anyway. And the highlights of the story is basically her unit was in the Andes and they were ambushed. And through this battle, Bridie spotted the source of this work up on a mountain, basically. And so she's like, great, I'll just wind strike this thing and let's end this. And she says, best wind strike I ever did. And it's like this proud moment. And Abigail's like, yeah, go army. But then Bridie's countenance changes. And she's like, well, what I didn't see is when I toppled that mountain ledge where the work was that one of my unit mates was going to get trapped in this pass because of what I just did. And we all knew, everybody, that we had to get the hell out of there. And basically they had to leave this girl behind. And so in getting out of there, Bridie, I guess, lost her eye or was, it was damaged or something. And when it was over, she said, I didn't get it fixed because I knew I'd never see the same way again without, my sister that I lost. So Abigail's like feeling the Charvel guilt. Like, I get that. I will never see the world the same way again because I lost Charvel. And so Bridie's like, I didn't deserve a new eye. So I just left this as like this constant reminder. This is my cross to bear kind of thing. I didn't deserve two eyes because it was my fault that she died. And Abigail, seeing this same kind of scenario that parallels the Charvel stuff, says to Bridie what everybody keeps saying, is kind of trying to say to Abigail. And Abigail says, that's, it's not your fault. That's war. And Bridie's just like, no, like, that was my sister. Like, I have to carry this forever now. So it's this very sad story that also kind of like parallels what happened with Abigail and like kind of gets Abigail to see like how to kind of reconcile this. Like, yeah, it's a burden I have to bear, but I have to keep going, kind of thing. And you can see Abigail really sitting with the story when it's over.
It was very important for Bridie to come into Abigail's life at that moment because she did indeed learn from her.
Yep.
And we'll see that come to fruition. But it's a very, very sad story. And I love how humanizing this whole scene is for Abigail.
Yeah, absolutely. It puts it frames everything in context for her, because Abigail is just like internalizing and just like spiraling with everything that happened. And here Bridie frames it for her. She's like, I'm never going to like, I love that it's the I too, because she's like, I'm never going to see life the same way again without her. And that's true. Like, she's going to have to live with this basically. And that's the same thing with Abigail. Like, you're never going to see life the same way again because of what just happened with Charvel. Like, you're going to have to learn to carry this burden. And that's basically the conversation. And so, yeah, I think Abigail needed to hear this basically. So go Bridie.
Go Bridie.
Go Bridie. So after that healing scene, we go over to, I guess, Cersei Barracks, where Tally is completely zoning out while poor Glory is trying to tell her something.
The way that she's sitting, she's like facing forward and Glory's like all up on her, sitting, looking. I'm like, girl, the body language here should tell you everything.
It's so funny. Yeah. Tally, eyes glued to the door. And Glory is just rambling, holding, what the hell is she holding? Is that a lollipop?
It is a lollipop.
Like, what, you get at a carnival? Like, where did she get that?
Yeah, it's one of the big lollipops with like the circular, it's like a line that's made into a circle. Or
like an old-fashioned, where did she get
old-fashioned
that?
lollipop. I don't know.
Oh my God, why does she have that? But whatever, she's holding a weird lollipop.
Do they sell that at the PX?
I don't know. Why would they have this on base? It's so weird.
No. Or is that something she brought from home?
No, maybe she got it. Remember when they went to the
they went to the fair thing.
The fair she bought it then, yeah.
Yeah, that's when
that
she's been holding on to that.
Special occasion, which is venting to Tally.
Apparently.
And so, whatever. So Tally is not listening. And finally Glory picks up on this and she's like, Tally, are you thinking about Garrett? And for once, that's not where Tally's head is. She's like, no, because Tally has more bigger and scandalous things on her mind, which she then word vomits out to Glory. And she starts telling her fantasy versus reality crisis that she's having, and rationalizing her reconciling being a good soldier with being a sister to Raelle, which the two are not going hand in hand right now. And she's like, Glory's just like confused this whole time. And she's like, wait, are we still talking about me? Like, what's happening? But Tally's just in Tally land and is just talking over Glory this whole time. And she's like, well, it's not your fault if you can't tell the whole story and be completely honest, because the circumstances are out of your control, right? So you just don't think about it. Don't focus on it. And this whole monologue, to me, kind of sounds like a Scylla monologue, where Scylla would be like rationalizing her role as spree agent and like being there for Raelle kind of thing. And I think this is an important dialogue that Tally's having, because eventually Tally has to reconcile betraying Scylla at some point and like forgiving Scylla. So I think this dialogue indicates that eventually she'll get there, because Tally just did the same thing to Raelle. She just kind of betrayed Raelle for quote unquote the greater good. So I think that's important for like later on. And poor Glory is just like, okay, yeah, Tally, I won't do that, whatever. And Tally's like, focus on what you can do and not what you can't. And Glory gets like more into the speech the more Tally goes on. And she's like, yes, totally. Let's do that, Tally. And after she like kind of unburdens to Glory, she looks 1,000,000% better and literally bounces off the bed and is like, thanks, Glory. And just like runs out of there. And poor Glory is there holding the weird lollipop being like, okay.
She's like, the fuck just happened?
The fuck just happened? Yeah, I was like, poor Glory. But
what was she talking about? I was trying to tell her the drama from the Goss, and she's just not listening to me. I mean, what is this?
No, Glory's like, is this advice? What is this? Thanks.
Well, what am I supposed to do with this, Tally?
But again, like, Tally is the type of person that needs to like talk about her feelings. So like, she needed to unburden to a third party. So this is like Raelle, like this is like her Byron. But the only difference is that like Glory has no idea what the hell is going on, but like Byron understood what was happening with Raelle. So just poor Glory is like this third party that's like, okay, thanks.
She's clueless.
She's so clueless. But Tally needs to unburden too, and she can't unburden to Abigail because the unburdening involves Raelle, so it's very complicated for poor Tally. So she was just unburdening in her rambling fashion.
You really understand why she was not tuning into anything Glory was saying. She had so much stuff going on at that moment, and then but it is nice that she had Glory.
Yeah. She
to talk through like a brick wall.
Yeah. So
but this is gonna get us to Raelle getting some bad news. Yeah. You should see Theora right now. She's not happy about this one.
No.
So we're in Isadora's office. And she's pouring tea, and I want some.
Mm-hmm.
I want some tea that Isadora made. I don't know. It just sounds really cozy.
What? Cozy from Isadora? I thought this was weird. I'm like, why is Isadora pouring tea?
I find
this is weird. Something's wrong. Danger.
Cozy.
Danger.
She's pouring tea because it's comforting Theora, okay?
Isadora?
She's trying to comfort in the worst possible way. All right, so Isadora's pouring tea, and Raelle's lamenting how she cannot eat or sleep, and yet here is Isadora pouring her tea. And it seems that no one cares or is doing anything about this Scylla situation. So she feels adrift, lost, can't make sense of any of it, and no one is giving her any answers. And then Isadora launches into a rather poetic few lines that I absolutely love, and the delivery was so good.
This is her Oscar-worthy monologue.
I want this on a t-shirt. But she says, grief is wild and stubborn like an untamed animal. And also, may I just point out that I love her voice?
Yes.
Just in general, but especially when she's saying this. She looks so earnest.
She does.
Like, she's really trying to give Raelle some comfort. She says, sometimes you have to let it run all over the place until it wears itself out. And this is a very apt description of grief.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful, but it gets the point across in a very straightforward way.
Yep.
And we've got this sorrowful string music in the background. This is like the episode of really sad string music. And I feel like it has a little bit of the Raelle and Scylla theme feel to it. So we're bringing that back.
That hurts.
It really does. But Raelle does not get what that has to do with Scylla, because she's still in the mindset that Scylla's alive somewhere. She just doesn't know where she is. So that leads Isadora to say, I think truth is the best medicine. So we're back to clinical Isadora.
Exactly.
And she proceeds to tell Raelle that Scylla was killed in the storm. And the audio goes far away as Raelle is hearing this news about Scylla being dead. So she's retreating back into her own mind, hearing all of this, and her face is just freaking heart-wrenching. Like, Taylor, why you kill me? It's so... This scene is so hard. But... So hard, but so beautiful at the same time. So you can see how soft Isadora's face was when she's saying these things. So she has real sympathy for Raelle's situation, but she can turn it on and off. So
we'll get there. But yes, Isadora being comforting. Put a pin in that.
Whoever thought?
Put a pin in that.
Whoever thought that she would have such a philosophical,
poetic. Who would have thought? Yeah.
Philosophical, poetic approach to grief.
Notice it's an animal analogy because this is Motherland.
Absolutely, because we can't get away from animals. These are witches.
These are witches. Yeah, exactly. She's like, how can I put this in an animal terms that you'll understand?
Exactly.
I love her. But
I love this scene.
It hurts. But it's very well done. Beautiful scene. All right. So unfortunately, we leave that Isadora Raelle scene and follow Raelle's light into back to the infirmary. And I want to point out that, like, for the rest of the episode, Raelle's light is literally everywhere because Raelle's grief is so ginormous that her lesbian Jesus powers are just off the rails and it's just invading everybody else's scenes. That's what's happening here. That's why it's literally everywhere. And we open with Alder sitting on Khalida's bed, creepily caressing her hands.
It's so creepy.
It's so creepy. It's
Lynn,
just,
you are creeping me out.
It's super creepy. Love Alder.
This is creepier than the face in the mycelium.
Yes. No, it really is. It's just like, and Adil comes in and he's like, this is creepy as fuck. What the hell are you doing to my sister? Get away from her. And he's like, what do you want? Like, what is this? And I want to note that we get a wide shot after that. And you see that in the salt circle right now, it's Alder and Khalida. Adil is outside and the biddies too. So it's interesting. The biddies are not in the salt circle. It's just Alder. So it's like ulterior motives going on here. And Alder, instead of like placating Adil, just cuts to the chase. And she's like, well, you know the songs you guys sing? They totally remind me of the ones my family used to carry. And I would totally love to learn them. And Adil just looks so fucking offended. And he's like, those songs you carried were never meant to be released into the world. And at this, Alder releases Khalida's hand. And she's like, okay, so this isn't going to go well. She's like, well, you mean in Salem, like way back when? And Adil gets serious and transitions into mother tongue. And he's like, you made weapons of your songs. And this is an issue because the Tarim, let us remind everyone, that they're extreme pacifists. Like they're the ones that have the big issue with Alder releasing the storm that changed the world because they think that they should be stewards of their gifts, not weaponizing them. And they stick to that despite everybody else in the world who's like, oh, the United States made a witch army, let's make a witch army too. So they're the group that's just still against this, and that's what Adil is vocalizing here too. And Alder rationalizes, and she's like, I was defending myself, and I made a place for my people, which she did do. But as we see, there's like consequences of all this stuff, and that's where we're at in the story. And then they transition out of mother tongue, and Adil's like, we're going to be the final stewards of our songs. And I want to be alone with my sister. Stop trying to steal our shit. Like, get away from me. And Alder is not pleased with this, but she's being political. And she's like, you know what? I'll come back when your sister's awake, basically. And I'm glad you guys are safe. And then she witch mic drops and leaves the biddies. And Adil just like guards this. And you see, this is why Adil is not keen on leaving the infirmary, because he gets that, you know, I needed help and I was desperate to save my sister's life. But like, I understand all these people want what we have, and there's strings attached to us being here, kind of thing. So
Alder's last line sounds halfway between a threat and a condition.
Yeah, no, it totally is. I think that this is her being like, oh, you're not going to help me, Adil? I'll just work on your sister. Because if I save her life, she owes me one, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's, yeah.
And you see, Sarah Alder's been headlong into this. I did the right thing by releasing my songs for centuries. So she's not coming back from that. And I really respect Adil for just standing up and being, hey, this is not power that you can have. This power is not yours. And in fact, the power that you did have, you used unwisely. So you're definitely not getting our power. And we're back to Sarah Alder and her power struggles.
Yeah, totally. And think about the position Adil's in. Right now, he kind of has no power. He's at her mercy. He's like, you're the one potentially, quote unquote, saving my sister's life. So like, I have no power. But the Tarim are profound pacifists. And Elliot talks about that after the storm. And you see that they're being persecuted all over the world because of that. Because everybody wants their seeds, because they're the last ones the army doesn't have for everybody's army. And Adil, even in this position where he has no power, he's still like, no, this is what I believe. This is what we believe. We're not changing our beliefs. Nothing has changed that. Even this thing that's killing my sister. Like, no.
Yeah.
So it says a lot about the two of them, their headspaces, their belief systems, and all that stuff. It's very
extreme. Cool, turn the other cheek.
Yeah, totally.
Do what you can to save your family, but at the same time, don't make the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah. Which is giving up the seed songs for Adil. Yeah, totally. Well said.
Absolutely. Love that scene.
Yeah, very
because
cool.
we get to see a very interesting side of Alder, because she's always talking to other army people or the president, but we get to see her talk to someone who's completely different and outside of her power structure in a way.
Yeah, and somebody who genuinely has something she wants.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
So you get
interesting.
to see her little. She gets so, I don't know what it is. Like I said,
It's
predatory
slimy the way
about.
she's
It's
doing this,
slimy,
like
and
politician-y.
yeah, and I get that that's a result of centuries of her going through all of this stuff and trying to maintain her, the witch's place and the power that she's gained, and her believing without a doubt that she knows how to guide the witches to where they need to be.
Yeah, and think about it from Alder's perspective too. Like what everything that just went down in this episode, like the primary matriline is being targeted by
Mm-hmm.
probably not the spree, and they're powerless because they didn't know any of this was
Mm-hmm.
happening. And so Alder's like, yeah, I really need all the weapons I can get for whatever the hell is coming towards me, you know?
Yeah. Alder's looking for a freaking weapon that she can.
Right.
She's looking for an atomic bomb, is what she's looking
Yeah,
for.
exactly. And so like while she's being creepy about this, like you kind of see why she's doing it. And like from Adil's perspective, you see why he's being like, "No, let's not do this." So like the question is who's right, who's wrong? Like
Nobody,
it's nobody.
really.
It's perspective yet again. Like it's such a cool scene. I love it.
It is. I love it so much. This
Yeah.
show.
It's
Jeez.
so good. Love it.
From that scene with Alder and Adil, we transition to the saddest little lesbian on the planet.
Why do we have to talk about this? It hurts.
I know, it's so
No.
painful. So painful, but we have to give Taylor her dues.
Totally. Yeah, all the awards for her. So good.
Exactly, all the awards. Raelle's sitting in a chair by this window, and her light is shining straight up on her.
She's drenched to the point where you can't see her.
Exactly. It's like in the Salva scene back earlier in the episode where she keeps going in and out of the light. This time she's fully in the light, not moving. And once again, the lighting on this episode,
Again,
10 out of 10.
it's just how overwhelming her grief is, I think, what the light is trying to show with
So
Raelle.
overpowering.
Yeah.
So Abigail comes in and asks Raelle what's wrong. And she says, you look sick. I mean, it's true. She's physically ill from grief.
Yeah.
That's what grief does to you.
Yeah, she told Isadora, I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping. And she really looks like it. Like
she really looks
and sounds
so
like
sick.
it. When she goes to talk, it's like she's dehydrated and hoarse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly think that Taylor was dehydrated during this
crying, yeah.
all the crying that she's been doing. So Raelle's in her own world of grief for the moment, and then she finally uses her voice to tell Abigail that Scylla's dead. Abigail doesn't really know what to say. She's just standing there opposite the super overwhelming Jesus light looking down at Raelle. Tally walks in and she wants to know what's wrong. So she starts Tally panicking and goes over there. And Abigail tells her the bad news that Scylla's dead. And Tally's like, no. Like, what happened? Who told you this kind of thing?
Yep.
So she kneels down and puts her hands on Raelle's legs and listens to Raelle basically be absolutely heartbroken and in shock as she talks about how they were supposed to go to the beach to Scylla's lighthouse because it was the safest place that Scylla had ever been. And that's where she is, right? She's not dead, because go to the safest place, that's what makes sense, right? So she's rationalizing and denying that Scylla's actually dead. And I think partially because she's in denial about Scylla being dead, and also partially because I think that she can feel that Scylla's not dead in some sense.
I think also, again, a big theme of this episode is denial also. And I think part of it too is that why she's harping on the beach and the lighthouse is because remember, Scylla at the end was like, hey, let's go to the beach. And Raelle was the one who said no.
Let's dance.
So I think this is Raelle. Again, the what ifs. What if I went to the beach with her instead of dancing? We could have danced at the beach. Like, I think this is the guilt piece too of like, did I kill her by accident? Kind of thing. Also,
I don't know if any of you guys have been through grief like this, but you can trick yourself into thinking that that's what happened rather than what actually happened. And it's a way of your brain protecting itself from the emotions that you can't process. That's also a factor in what Raelle's doing. She's making an alternate reality where things turned out better and Scylla's alive and she's just waiting for her at the lighthouse. So if she can just get to the lighthouse, she'll find Scylla and everything will be okay again. And Tally can't really do anything but quietly agree with everything Raelle's saying, which is heartbreaking as well, because you can see the guilt and the pain all over Tally's face as she's watching her sister fall apart. Like you mentioned earlier, she is not in her right mind.
no, she's watching Raelle lose her grip on reality.
Yes, Raelle is creating an alternate reality where everything is going to be okay.
And it's unfortunate that Tally basically inadvertently confirms this, where she's like, yeah. And that gives Raelle permission to do what she does later.
It does.
Which,
and
yeah, we'll get
Tally
there.
had no idea.
No. But yeah.
So, we've got the sorrowful strings back, and it's like a softer part from the beginning of Raelle and Scylla's theme. But so basically, Raelle is in denial, creating realities where Scylla's fine and she can go get her and everything will be cool. Tally's struggling with, oh my god, what have I done? Abigail's like, holy shit, the grief. How are we gonna get through this?
Yeah.
I mean, being there watching someone just disintegrate mentally is the hardest thing. You can't, like, once again, they have no control.
Yeah, and I think Abigail also gets in the scene. She's like, I know there's nothing I can say to console you right now. I get that, because she's going through, the parallel grief path, like you mentioned earlier.
She knows.
Yeah.
Tally, on the other hand, has her other motivations for confirming what Raelle's saying, because she wants everything to be okay too.
Yeah, and she can't tell Raelle the truth, so she just gives her a crumb.
Yep.
Yeah. And this scene is more proof that Elliot loves torturing Raelle.
Yes! Good lord.
Loves
Not even at
her.
episode 7 yet. And
no.
He's tortured Raelle.
We're just halfway through the season, and how many times has he tortured Raelle? A lot. Just,
yeah.
She gets tortured the most. So we leave that drenching lesbian Jesus light to blue light. So could this be a Scylla scene? Let's find out. It's nighttime, and the unit's all asleep. And Abigail is having a PTSD nightmare in her sleep. And Raelle notices because she's not sleeping. And she gets up, and Tally's awoken by this, and they go to confront Abigail, like wake her up. But Abigail like panics out of the dream and does work, and the lights all go on. And Bridie rushes into the room, and they're all just staring at Abigail like, are you okay? Like, do you need anything? And Abigail's like, why are you guys all hovering? Like, what the hell's happening? Like, what's going on? And Raelle tells her, well, you were having a nightmare. And Abigail's like, no, I wasn't. I had a leg cramp. Everybody get away from me. Go back to sleep. Like, Bridie, get out of here. And again, she's the beehive. Nobody wants to poke the beehive. So they're like, okay, Abigail. And everybody goes back to their bunks. Nobody turns the lights off, by the way. They're going back to sleep, but they leave the lights on. What are you guys doing? And you see Abigail like curl up in her bunk and looking just broken, and she starts silently crying to herself because she knows she had a nightmare. But Abigail, again, is still struggling with accepting her situation. And Raelle goes back in the bunk to just lay there because she obviously isn't sleeping. And as she's like kind of sighing and like processing Abigail's stuff a bit, she starts scratching her hand and then looks at her hand. And lo and behold, she gets a witch text. And so this is like the lighthouse for Raelle. She got her hope. She's like, well, only one person in the world knows how to witch text, and that's Scylla, because we saw Scylla's blue light. And you just see like hope in her eyes, and you see her look a little bit more alive than she has like the whole freaking episode, because this is a confirmation to her that like, oh, Scylla is alive. I'm not crazy. Like, nobody else could possibly be texting me. Like, it's Scylla.
It's an S, for goodness sake. Nobody else would text me an S.
No. Well, Scylla is the only witch texter in the world right now.
She's the inventor.
So, yeah, Raelle gets her lighthouse right now.
Her face, man. Her face.
Yeah. So,
there's the lighthouse.
There's the
right
lighthouse.
in her hand. Right in the palm of her hand.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not gonna go there quite yet because we have to go back to basic training.
We do.
So the unit's running with some other cadets across the campus, I guess.
I love this.
I don't get it.
I have questions about this whole exercise, but continue.
So many questions. Are we on some kind of just run, hike, whatever? They've got their packs on. Or backpacks, I should say.
Was this mandatory is my question, because they all fuck off by the end of the scene.
Exactly. Like nobody, and there are no instructors there.
No. Like, what were they doing? It's so weird. But anyway, sorry.
Let's go on a grape run, everybody.
Yeah, they're like, you know what, guys? The spree, etc. Let's run together. I don't know. It's weird. It's so weird.
I don't know. It's like, let's get the brigade together and have a run.
Yeah, for fun.
Yeah, but wouldn't they be doing other training at this point?
Would somebody be yelling at them like, come on, ladies, faster? But no.
Maybe it's somebody that doesn't give a fuck and they're just off eating their sandwich.
It's flying lady who's like, hey, man, run, whatever.
Like, hey, fam, run. I'm not going with you.
No, I'm not going with you.
Run to the end of campus and back.
I'm going to take some salvo and meet you at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She's flying above them.
She does
That's why we can't see her.
Yeah. She does not see all or care. She's just like, I'll be chilling at the end, guys. See you later.
Yeah, she's flying above them and she sees those three stop. She's like, fuck it. And they just
they'll get there eventually. It's fine.
So Tally suggested Abigail go to the infirmary, which confuses Abigail. It's like, why would I do that? And Raelle says leg cramps. I'm like, girl! Oh my God, sass. But she doesn't really mean it in a sassy way.
She doesn't.
She's just saying, like, I get you.
Yeah.
But maybe you need to actually, like, get this checked out.
For your quote-unquote leg cramps. We'll just call it leg cramps. It's fine.
Exactly. She's like, I'm just trying to use your code words.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, exactly. Is that not code for breakdown now? My leg cramps hurt so bad.
Because I'm having a leg cramp this entire episode.
All of my legs are cramping.
All 95.
Yeah.
So Abigail stops and she gets snippy again because she thinks they're making fun of her. But they actually confront the issues for once.
Mm-hmm.
And Abigail says that she feels less powerful than she ever has, and it isn't going away. She doesn't feel like it's ever going to change. But, I mean, like, all feelings are temporary, Abigail. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. But I love this line because all three of them, you see their faces resonate with this because all of them feel powerless. All three of them.
I'd also like to point out that Bridie has stopped like a decent.
I was going to ask where Bridie was in the scene. I was like,
she's just chilling back there. You see her stop and just kind of watch.
She's having a smoke break.
She's trying to keep a discreet distance.
Yeah.
So she doesn't bother Abigail. But Raelle pulls out Isadora's grief speech and tells her that grief is stubborn and wild. You're going to be okay. So she doesn't say the whole thing, but she says the part that really stuck with her, basically.
Can I point out really quickly?
Yeah.
I love how Raelle has this habit of quoting necros.
She does.
She does it all the time, particularly when she's fighting with Scylla. She will quote necros or quote Scylla in particular when they're fighting, and I love that. It's just a way to show us, I think, for the writer's perspective, that Scylla is literally always on her mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why she's quoting this. Also, Isadora gave an Oscar-worthy speech. Who wouldn't quote that? It's amazing.
Exactly. So, of course, she's going to absorb that. But at the same time, it was related to Scylla anyway, because that's why she was there talking to Isadora in the first place.
Ding.
Ding. And we're back to the only thing in Raelle's brain.
Ever.
Like, I think it takes up 3/4 of her brain.
It does. No, it does. That's why they keep putting this dialogue in here. It's like she's literally quoting the necros, and that means Scylla. So does it all the time. I love it.
Exactly. But that grief speech seems to soften Abigail, and then Raelle says that she's sorry about Charvel. Finally. Like somebody I don't think anyone's really said that out loud to Abigail at this point.
No.
Like they're obviously everybody's not happy about what happened and they're sorry about it, but no one has said, I'm sorry that this happened to someone you love and that you're going through this. And Abigail returns with, I'm sorry about Scylla.
And it's sincere too.
Exactly. Everyone's they're bonding.
They are.
They're hardcore bonding. But that also makes Raelle look a little uncertain again because she got that witch text last night.
She sure did.
So Abigail says thank you and she runs off to catch up to the flying teacher and the rest of the cadets. And Raelle is like, oh, I forgot my medal at barracks. Sure, girl.
What? Tally?
Whatever
Tally
you say.
believes that.
I don't think Tally believes it. I just think Tally's not going to push Raelle on anything right now.
That was the most un-Raelle line ever.
It was the dumbest. It was like the worst excuse for her to leave.
A cry for help right there, Tally.
Exactly.
Warning bells.
But Tally's not pushing Raelle at this moment in time because that would lead to discussions she doesn't want to have.
That's very true.
So she's going to let Raelle go.
Get her medal.
With her crappy ass excuse, thinking, oh, she just needs to go grieve because we just talked about all this shiz with grief.
Yeah, she needs to go cry under a live oak.
Exactly. She needs to go cry under a live oak. So Tally's like, all right, fine, whatever, bye, see ya. Even though she's like, looks like, oh shit. And then we go to Abigail in the infirmary, wandering into the room where Khalida and Adil are, which is the same room that they had Scylla and Raelle in an earlier episode. And I'm like, if she's not supposed to be in there, why are they in the middle of the freaking infirmary like that?
Yeah, that made no sense. They're like, you're not supposed to be in here. I'm like, this is the infirmary. Where was she supposed to go?
There's not just one bed in there. There's
right.
No private room.
There's multiple cots. Like, what the heck? That was weird.
This is obviously a general area for people who are ill to be in.
Right.
So why the hell would she not be in there?
Did you put a sign that says don't go in here? Maybe do that next time. That was weird.
Weren't there people in that little office area
there's
behind
like a receptionist.
Yeah, like what is she doing just letting her walk in there?
Right.
Oh, she looks like she's supposed to be here, so...
It was so weird.
No.
I don't get that.
Anyway, she and Adil make eye contact, and you know from the get-go that this is gonna go somewhere else. From that moment.
This is Earth meeting Sky, and I must point out, this was all Tally's doing, by the way, because she sent her to the infirmary, so Tally the matchmaker.
You have Tally to thank for this. Matchmaker Tally and her getting results, not even knowing it.
I know.
So we know there's something going to be set up here because they're looking at each other like, "Oh hey,
how you doing?"
Which is on one side, oh that's cute, and on the other side, well, I guess Adil really is going to have a reason to stick around.
But also the look on Abigail's face kind of tells you everything because she doesn't look at dudes like that.
No, she doesn't at all.
So it's definitely different. It's like a genuine, oh, hi, versus like, I could use you because I'm having a shit day and I need 10 minutes of charging.
I think that she actually felt one of those momentary connection things like that happens when you set eyes on somebody and you're like, oh, well then.
Yes, no, that's totally what just happened there.
Yep, they had a moment.
But then Adil disappears.
Yeah.
Literally disappears.
Adil, literally.
That was weird. Like, why did you just do that? That was weird. He's like, this is too much. I gotta go.
Too much.
He leaves Khalida. Like, it's very strange.
Yeah.
It was weird. But that's Adil's power. That's why we had the mysterious footsteps. He can disappear. So, weird flex, Adil, but sure. Did you have anything else?
I feel like he's still in the room. He's just not visible.
He just disappeared and is standing by the window staring at Abigail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
All right, Adil. I mean, were you scared too and then just invisibled yourself? Why didn't you invisible your sister too?
Right. I don't know why. Well, then everybody would panic because Khalida's the commodity right now.
True.
So
that's true.
But it was a weird flex. I'm like, why did he do that?
But those people at the reception desk are not paying attention.
No, they're not paying attention to anything. They're listening. Let Abigail get like almost touch Khalida, and they're just like, wait,
they're on their coffee break.
Like, we close in 30 minutes. Can you get out?
Yeah, like, get out.
I have things to do. Yeah, it was
This is not Bed Bath & Beyond.
No. It's a very weird scene. But so
every scene in the infirmary is a weird scene.
Yeah, why do weird things keep having... Okay, so yeah, we had creepy Alder creepily predatoring on Khalida. Then we had the eye fucking scene with the pilot and Anacostia hating Scylla for no reason. And now we have this where Abigail gets in, but because the receptionist is not paying attention, and then Adil just disappears on her. It's very strange.
Can we not have a normal infirmary sick people scene, please?
No, never. There's a weird one in the next episode too. Like, it just nothing good happens in the infirmary. We'll just put it that way.
It's the freaking Twilight Zone in there.
It is. I don't know who's running this, but it's not going well. So we leave the weirdness in the infirmary and we go back to Cersei Barracks, where Tally is just rummaging around everything and eventually locates her salva container on top of the dresser. And she comments, like, I didn't leave this here. That's weird. And opens her little container and recognizes that it's empty. And so you see Tally cycle through the wait and then, oh shit. And she commands Abigail, doesn't ask. She's like, check yours. And Abigail's like, what? She's like, do it right now. And Abigail opens hers and it's also empty. And Tally asks, where's Raelle? It's putting this all together that, oh shit, something happened to Raelle. And we cut to Raelle in the field, drenched in her light, clutching the bird skull corsage. And so she's about to do something totally reckless in Scylla's honor. And then we get a close up on her face, and she looks even more sickly, like on the brink of death. Like, bloodshot eyes, there's tear streaks down her cheeks. She just looks heartbroken and just completely devastated. And she's just in this period of grief where, like, you just don't even care what happens to you. You're just like, I don't even care. Like, this is Hail Mary time for me to, like, feel something and get out of whatever this is. And then she opens the salva container and literally pours a galaxy into her hands and places all of it on her neck at once. So this is very dangerous what she's doing. Like, she just doesn't even care about herself anymore. She's just like, I'm going after the lighthouse. I don't even care. And she starts flying. And it's very clumsy, and she very much struggles to get a hang of it. She, like, falls and gashes her eye. And Taylor kind of comments on this. We talked about it earlier, that part of the flying thing is that her emotions are the untamed animal running wild. And so that's confounding this. And then also she's never really, like, flown before in motion. So she's not in the headspace to be learning this new skill, and she's having an issue doing it. And she also talks about how at this point Raelle is very, very conflicted, again, between her intuition about the things she knows and what the rest of the world is telling her, which is that she's crazy, Scylla's dead, and she's like, I got the witch text. How can this be? And part of the issue with Raelle is that she's isolating herself and she's not looking to her friends for help. She's just like, I need to do this on my own. And, we see her friend's response to that afterwards. And Raelle, just once she kind of gets a hang of this a little bit better, you just see her take off over the water in search of the beach and the lighthouse.
It's a scene that kills you. And I'd like to note that she puts the bird skull corsage in her little leg pouch.
Yeah, she carries it with her. It's her, like, good luck charm.
Couldn't she have put that in the leg pouch to give to Scylla?
Couldn't she have pinned it on her jacket? That would have been less weird.
I don't know. Whatever. All we really need to get out of this scene is that she just OD'd on salva.
Yeah.
And she is flying so high that she really will die if she falls.
Yeah. You're in danger, girl. But again, it's that grief abyss where you don't even care. You're like, this might kill me.
She doesn't feel
whatever. Like, yeah, she doesn't feel anything. This is her Hail Mary.
You feel numb at that point, and
Yes.
The only thing that matters to you is getting to whatever goal your brain has. And for her, that was finding Scylla at the lighthouse. So then we have the symbolism of the lighthouse in general.
It's the hope thing, and it's an abandoned lighthouse, so it's like false hope.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
we've got false hope on the horizon that she's going towards.
Yep.
It's just so sad.
It's the most devastating. It's so devastating what Raelle's doing
It
and
is.
dealing
This
with.
episode,
It hurts.
it hurts like more than, I don't know. Some of the subsequent episodes, they have periods that hurt really bad, but not an episode like this that's just grief in its entirety.
So much grief.
All of these different looks at grief, exploring it in different ways with different characters. Yoicks.
It's like this is the rock bottom episode, and like from here things start going upward, but like everybody hits rock bottom, so it's just a very depressing episode. But it's very important.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's the labor and pain. It's like this is the labor part to get to you to the new birth kind of thing.
But that gets us to the Rescue Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
So they call them.
The Rescue Rangers. Love it.
It's Tally and Abigail trying to convince Bridie to take them to the lighthouse because they know that's where Raelle's gone. This is what she's been talking about, and she thinks she'll find Scylla there. So, and Bridie's like, "No way! I'm under orders to stay at Fort Salem." End of story. But Tally steps in and says that Raelle's on an impossible mission and she's hurting and we're the only ones that can find and save her. Okay, number one, no, you're not. You could tell somebody to go look for her and I'm sure they would. But I understand why you need to go. So I'm with you, but logically that doesn't make sense.
Well, Raelle loves the army. So if other army people showed up, that would not be good for Raelle. Raelle would not respond.
No, it wouldn't be good for Raelle.
But yeah, I know what
probably
you mean.
Go even more bananas than she does.
I think that's what Tally's getting at. She's like, I think it needs to be us of anybody that needs to go find her because for her mental health.
Exactly. But Tally's stepping outside the army lines at this point. And so is Abigail. So they're defying army orders to go get their sister, which is what finally convinces Bridie when Abigail brings that up. So she's basically saying, Bridie, I know you know what this feels like. So will you please help us get our sister back? And Bridie is moved by that, as one would be. And she takes them in a transport vehicle off to the beach. I want to know how far this place is away.
Yeah, seriously, where is this place?
Where is this place? I mean, like, it can't be that far from Fort Salem.
Right.
Because they get there within a short period of time.
Right.
So
where was it?
I understand that Raelle flew in more of a straight line than they would have driven there. So how long has she been out there?
Yeah, good question.
Anyway, they get to the beach and they're Tally and Abigail are in the back of this transport vehicle. They jump out and they run over to Raelle fast as they can, which is kind of a cool scene. So they're rushing just to save their sister. So they get to her and Raelle is half in the surf and half out of the surf. She's just laying there on her stomach, passed out. And they turn her up. First of all, ladies, you should know by now not to just find somebody on the beach and turn them over like that. She could have broken her neck.
I know. Like, it almost looked like there was blood smeared all over those rocks when they were running up towards it. I was like, where are her injuries?
Yes, we're in the dramatic, this is a TV show zone, but if you come across somebody on the beach, don't just move their body like that.
No.
You can ascertain if they're alive or not without moving them and possibly doing further harm.
Yeah.
Just a FYI, guys. I guess we can't help saying that because we're healthcare people.
Yeah, I think also they're like, let me get her out of the water so she could drown.
Right.
But I get that. The way they were jostling her was not good. Don't do that.
No, not good at all. So, yeah, like Theora said, they're getting her out of the water, and Raelle starts to wake up, and she's talking and asking where Scylla is. And, of course, Tally answers that we're here, and Abigail's like, Scylla isn't here. And then delirious Raelle says that Scylla contacted her and tells Abigail to look at her hand. So she's holding out her hand, trying to point like, she contacted me. And Abigail's like, there's nothing there.
Also, they don't know what witch texting is, so that means nothing.
They don't know what witch texting is. It means nothing. So out of her mind, delirious Raelle is trying to get the point across, but they don't know what she's talking about. And Raelle tells them to stop trying to get her up. She's like, pretty much let go of me, get off of me kind of thing. I just think she doesn't want to, she needs them to stop and let her do what she's trying to do. And she stumbles around on her own for a second and starts screaming, she's alive, she's not dead. So she's still trying to hold on to that fantasy she created where Scylla's alive and she's going to find her. But she collapses again. Keep in mind, she took so much salva. Who the hell knows what her body's going through right now?
Yeah, nothing good. She needs needs to go to the infirmary after this salva.
She really does.
Yeah, scene.
Where's Anacostia when she's really...
Yeah, you could have actually died, Raelle, like, in this scene.
Yeah, exactly. And for so many reasons.
Yeah.
So, Tally is right up against Raelle with her face and like Raelle's hair and just trying to comfort her. And we get this wide shot of them in the water and the lighthouse to the left and the sun below the horizon. And you've got these clouds that are covering them, but they're not quite to the sun. So it's that shot.
Yeah.
Is everything.
It's the metaphor of a shattered hope, is what that is.
It is. And you've got the sorrowful string music back. Yeah. You clearly see the depth of Raelle's feelings in this entire episode, but it's really summed up in all of these shots with the blinding light and then this shot with the muted sunlight in the background where she's kind of deflated to a degree and her hope is gone. Like what? But she's also not in her right mind still. So
no, and I think the other piece too, with the muted light, is also that this whole time Raelle's been grappling with this on her own, and in this moment, Tally and Abigail are there for her, and Raelle leans on them for the first time. And Taylor talks about this scene in particular, and she says that her big message that she thinks that comes from this episode is that it's okay to lean on people and it's okay to take emotional support when you need it. And that's what Raelle's ultimately doing at the very end. After she pushes them away one more time, she's like, no, I can do this on my own. And then collapses because she can't. And finally leans on them. And so I think that's partially why like her blinding grief light is just muted, because she's finally like leaning on others emotionally and also physically because she's can't stand. But yeah.
Dispersing her emotions.
Yeah. So it's a very heartbreaking scene and they all did a great job.
They really all did do a great job.
It hurts, but it's beautiful.
Oh, I love that. I really just want an art print of that one shot.
It's beautiful.
But
But yeah,
where are we going next?
So Raelle, for all of her grief, was 100% correct. And we finally get into a blue light scene, and there's Scylla, shackled to a chair in grimy clothes with like dirt on her face. Who the fuck took her shoes? Because that is so fucked up and cruel. She just has bare feet on this stone floor. Like, that's just mean. Give her shoes back. Shame on you, whoever did that. And Scylla has a silencing collar on because she's a powerful witch, which means this woman had a silencing collar, which stops them from doing work. But she was still witch texting because she has that much big witch energy. You can't stop her even with a silencing collar. So that's Scylla big witch energy ramshorn for you. And we see she's not alone in this dungeon with these obnoxious spotlights. Like, ew, who designed this room? It's just horrible.
Well, it's torture.
I know.
That's how you torture people.
No, I know. It's terrible. But also I'm trying to look at the scene. Can we move the spotlights?
Yeah.
But anyway, so Mama Costia is with her and pressing her about the wedding. And she's like, well, how did you plan this? And Scylla is just sitting there, tapping her feet and looking ahead and just clenching her jaw. Like, I'm not going to tell you anything. And Anacostia circles her like a shark and gets real close and is like, okay, you won't talk to us? And then we cut to Isadora in the doorway.
No, Isadora!
And I was so mad. I was like, Isadora, how dare you? But now we have to go to what was Isadora doing off screen. So I think that when this whole attack went down and Anacostia and Alder get Scylla, they're like, okay, well, she's a necro. We have to tell Isadora because she's going to notice that like her best student is missing. Because Isadora has assigned many important experiments to Scylla, let's be honest, because Scylla's the best in her class. So they're like, we need to tell Isadora, she's going to freak out, and she's going to start looking for her best necro. So Alder and Anacostia off screen go talk to Isadora, and they have to let her know. So they debrief her regarding the situation. And Isadora obviously was very disappointed because this is her promising young necro, and she had such high hopes, but now she's a spree agent. But before she can like reassign the experiments that Scylla was working on, Anacostia is like, listen, there's this other cadet named Raelle who's super reckless and is super in love with this girl. And she's probably going to come looking for her because she's Lesbian Jesus and she'll get in. Just watch her. So at some point, she's going to come find you and question you. So you better prepare something to tell this girl. But as far as anyone else is concerned, Scylla's dead. Okay, she's dead. Because, you know, we're going to get rid of her once we do what we got to do. And Isadora's like, all right, fine. I agree. As long as I also get to interrogate Scylla, you know, for science. Because I never get to leave the lab. This sounds like fun. So they agree. So Isadora goes off screen to prepare what she's going to say to Raelle. Because she has to talk to a person. So she has to obviously practice this. Because she can't do small talk. And this is not small talk. This is heavy talk. So Isadora goes to her thinking room, which is where the mycelium was, to practice what she's going to say. Because the mycelium's like her best friend and is a very good listener. So she's practicing this very poetic Shakespearean Oscar-worthy speech that she ends up giving Raelle. And while she's doing that, she gets like a tickle in her throat. And she's like, well, I got to go brew tea to like save my throat. So she's like, I'll be gone for 3 minutes. I can leave this door unlocked. And so she goes into her office to brew the tea. And that's why the mycelium door is unlocked. And while the tea is steeping in her office, she goes back to, you know, talk to the mycelium. And that's where she finds Raelle. And she's like, what the fuck are you doing with my mushroom? And that's where the scene picks up. And then afterwards, they share the tea because she was already brewing it for herself. And she's like, well, let's share this, I guess. And that's when she gives her Oscar-worthy speech that she was practicing and breaks the fake news to Raelle. So Isadora practiced all of that shit because, let's be real, she can't talk to people. And you have the mycelium to thank for that. She was the, mycelium was the audience.
I wonder if it told her how her speech was going.
Oh, it sure did.
Right.
It gave her notes, and they're like, that, Isadora, you can't use mushroom metaphors for everything. You got to use something else. People understand animals. Like, talk about animals.
So that just kind of means there's more than one motivation for Isadora to lie to Raelle about Scylla being dead. They needed her to stop digging, and they needed her to kind of go away. But also, I think it was Isadora saw it as an act of kindness to kind of give her some closure, when really it was not going to give her any closure.
No.
At all.
She needed to nip this in the bud, too. She's like, you can't be traipsing around my lab. Like, she's dead. Get out of my lab now.
But Scylla's face during this whole thing is super interesting. The way that she's just holding steady with her defiance.
She definitely
does.
Which
we see change.
Yeah, we'll get to that, yes. But correct. Scylla is very much in this scene just holding it together while Anacostia interrogates her. And then
I love the little feet taps.
She does the feet. I think that's part of her concentrating.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have Isadora, who is talking to her tarnished necro and is like, well, if you won't talk to us, maybe there's someone else you will talk to. And they leave the room. And the dramatic door closes. And then once that happens, you see Scylla break her like stoicism, and her face starts like contorting, and she's obviously really scared. Like she's like, oh fuck, like I don't know what they're gonna do to me. I don't know what's gonna happen. She just like lets her pent up emotions kind of come out, and she's frantically witch texting Raelle, or trying to concentrate on witch texting Raelle. But I think she's too emotional to do it and doesn't have enough time before the door opens again. And Sarah Alder walks in by herself without the biddies and comes into the room and just says, "Hello, Scylla." And then the episode rudely ends.
The eye contact.
Yeah.
The way they look at one another. Scylla's face, man. She's not going to break for Alder or anybody else.
Nope. But what a rude way to end the episode.
Very rude.
Miss Maria. How dare you?
Very rude. How dare. Also, I would like to go back to the whole silencing caller, because I feel like the silencing caller must only work to get rid of work that comes vocally.
Oh, yeah.
And doesn't affect the other work that they do, like what Scylla was drawing on her hand.
You're right. But the first time Scylla did the witch text, we see her mumbling. Mm-hmm. So did she get more powerful? And she's like, I don't need to mumble. I could just do this now without mumbling.
Yeah, I think
so. Interesting.
But also the first time she does the witch texting, it's not the same in that she's placing the spell at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So when she's placing the spell, she's placing the work onto their hands at that point. So she's setting that in place, and then later on she can just use it whenever she wants. She doesn't have to like say the words.
Interesting. Scylla's so damn smart.
That's my interpretation of it, because you have to vocalize the intention in witchcraft. You vocalize the intention when you're setting that work in place, and afterwards you can use it. And I think that that's what the kind of forbidden spree magic is about, because they can put it in bottles and just leave it somewhere and then it still works.
Yep. So Scylla's a smart little magic inventor.
Scylla's got big witch energy.
She has the most.
We love her.
We do.
Episode wrap up.
Where's your tertiary character?
Oh, my tertiary character. Woo! So flying class lady.
Yes.
In every scene where you see all of these people unsupervised, it's her turn with the cadets.
I love it.
And she's off in her little room in her rocking chair watching Coronation Street.
I buy it.
Because she has the episodes all ready to go and she needs to go back to the VCR and watch them all.
The VCR. It's true. I love it.
It's true. So she's watching her stories, as my grandmother used to call them.
Totally.
And not giving a shit about what those cadets are doing.
No.
She's like the ultimate, like, okay, you see this when people are in the scene where Raelle is on night watch. Nobody was there to supervise her.
She was there. Well, she wasn't there.
The only person there to supervise her was Scylla. So obviously people aren't watching these cadets.
No.
And it was every time you see them not watching the cadets, it was her turn.
Yeah. I feel like she's the cool substitute teacher that comes in and puts on the movie and she's like, do whatever, I don't care.
Exactly. Do whatever you want. I don't care. Right? Notes back and forth.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. That's what she's doing off screen all the time when she should be on screen.
Yep. I mean, occasionally she reads a book or knits, but
yeah, she joins the biddies for the risk game.
Or like whittles. I don't know. She seems like a whittler.
She does, actually. Like rocking on her chair, whittling stuff. I can see that. Excellent.
I feel like Raelle's going to do that when she gets old.
She is. Oh, Raelle. If she makes it there. Poor tortured baby.
If she does make it there, I hope it's in a happy way, not in a tortured.
All right.
So we met the Turim, finally.
We met the Turim.
We get Adil and Khalida. They're obviously not the only Turim that have existed. Khalida is ill with mysterious sickness. We don't know really anything about that except that it's creepy and black.
And it's bad enough that he had to come out of hiding to bring her to the army, which you see as pacifists, they are very much against. So you get the sense that this is bad.
No one in this episode is processing their trauma correctly.
No. The theme is denial.
The theme is denial. The Bellwether line's being hunted, and there are witches in the world that they don't know about.
Dun dun dun.
That's a big, big thing. Everyone still thinks that this is the spree, or they're trying to pretend that it's still the spree.
Yeah, they're pretending.
I really think that some of them know, but they're just not ready to go there yet. I don't know. I feel like Petra has a line into that.
Oh yeah.
But Abigail gets a bodyguard because of the attack on the Bellwether line. And she finally acknowledges that she's not feeling powerful, and the unit bonds, or I'm sorry, she and her bodyguard bond over that. And Bridie actually teaches her a lot in the small space of time that they have in this episode. Alder wants the Tarim songs, which is predictable.
Yeah.
And Adil knew that was coming because the other shoe was dropping.
And Alder's being really creepy about it.
She's a creeper in this episode.
Yeah, she's really creepy in this episode.
Usually it's the biddies that strike me as a little bit creepy,
right?
But they were astonishingly normal and didn't have a lot of screen time.
No,
there.
I know, it was weird.
But Scylla contacted Raelle, and Raelle's definitely the wild grief girl. She took a shit ton of salva just to get to the safe lighthouse, and let's think about the symbolic nature of that. The unit's all together in their grief, but Tally's still suffering from not being able to talk to Raelle and her betrayal, suffering with her betrayal. And we find out that Scylla's alive and being kept in a cell, but she isn't talking. And they're pretty much torturing her with the lights, and we'll see what else happens in the next episode. And Alder's there to do her little if you don't talk thing. So we'll see what happens with that. Horrible way to end the episode for getting us on a cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm. Scylla ends the show again so many times.
And once again, Scylla ends the show.
Big witch energy.
Isadora lied to protect Raelle's heart, but also to get her to stop getting up in everybody's face about where Scylla is.
Yeah.
So, is there anything you want to add?
I mean, that's basically it. And the other piece too, at the very, very end, like Taylor said, like the big theme here too is like leaning on people when you need it. And so that will carry the unit forward to the next episode. And I think they're on the path of accepting reality for what it is, because like we mentioned last time, like their fantasies of just life are being shattered. And so they're on this road of acceptance of like reality and the moral gray. So.
And to a degree, Tally and Abigail were both in the fantasy that the army was the thing. That's where they were going with their life, period. Not acknowledging anything bad about the army. And Raelle's over here like, fuck the army. Girlfriend. And, so she's going through a different dealing with reality as far as Scylla being dead, alive. What's happening with that?
Yep.
So who's your Big Witch Energy Award for this episode?
I'm not gonna lie, this one was really hard.
It was really hard.
I kind of have two, but if I have to choose one, I'm gonna give it to Tally Craven, because I think for Tally, she is very much in a very uncomfortable, like an un-Tally position this whole episode, but she's the one who kind of gets it together first. And she got through to Abigail first to get her shit together, where she's like, you need to go to the infirmary. And then she commands Abigail to look for the salva, which was very un-Tally-like, so Tally with the backbone. And because of that, she put together what was going on with Raelle, and she was the one that really stepped in with Bridie, because like Abigail wasn't fighting. She was just like, come on, let's do it. And then it was Tally that was the one who's like, no, we have to go. We have to be the ones. We know what's best. And so she really got that negotiation going that's ended up getting them off base and saving Raelle's life. So for that, I'm giving it to Tally Craven.
Okay. I'm picking up what you're putting down. You should tell us your second one after I tell you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
So mine, I'm giving it to Raelle for surviving this episode.
Honestly, fair. She had Big Witch Energy moments, let's be real.
She really did. She could have died so many times
So many
in
times.
this episode, but she kept chugging along and she kept believing. And like I said, I really do believe that on some level within herself, because of their connection, she knew that Scylla was alive. Like some people if you're connected to someone in that way, you can have that sense about if something's wrong with them or what's going on. So yeah, that's mine.
It wasn't adding up for Raelle. But also the big witch energy off with the Anacostia. Like, she definitely had big witch energy moments.
Oh, good Lord, she got up in Anacostia's face, and
That
that
was
is
great.
brave.
Right, yeah, totally. But second tied-ish with Tally was Isadora, because Isadora in the lab scene with Mama Bellwether just like summons minions left and right without saying anything. She's just like, and they would hand her like scalpels and things. Like, that's how she runs her lab. So like big witch energy for how she runs the lab. That Oscar-worthy performance with Raelle when she tells her Scylla died, with pulling out this poetry. Isadora's not poetic. Where did that come from? Like, obviously she put a lot of effort into all of that. And then the smug face in the dungeon when she's interrogating Scylla, like, Isadora.
Good Lord.
I know.
She scares me sometimes.
I love her. Yes. But so it's between the two of them, but Tally ultimately saved Raelle's life, so that's why I gave it to Tally.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It's a miracle that Raelle even survived.
Yeah, like I said, like when people are, when you're in that grief thing where you don't want to feel that way anymore and you just want it to end, like you just don't care. And Raelle just didn't care about herself at that moment. She's just like, I'm going to get Scylla. If I die, I die. We're back to Pilot Raelle, who's just like, if I die, I die. Like, whatever. It's gotta go sometime. Might as well go with a bang. So
yeah, and also if Scylla's gone, then I don't want to be here either.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's the Willage collar trigger, but worse. Because I think Raelle feels responsible partially for this whatever happened to Scylla, because Scylla was at the wedding because of Raelle, and Raelle could have been with her at the end, but she went to help other people, and so it's worse than what happened to her mom in Raelle's mind. So
many possibilities for alternate scenes in this series where you could just be like, well, what if Raelle was with Scylla when they came, if you will?
Yeah, and it's like, I also don't know if the witch text like helped or made it worse, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Because
it threw the whole reality thing back into question.
Yeah, because like Raelle could also be like, well, was that real? Or was I hallucinating? So
exactly.
Because again, it doesn't, it's there for like a hot second and then it's gone. So like Abigail even is like, Raelle, what the fuck are you doing? But like Raelle's like, no, I saw it. But like, it's like, did I see it? Yeah. So poor Raelle. Like, again, Elliot loves torturing Raelle. That's just a common theme. Lord. So much.
Poor Raelle.
Poor Raelle. So that was the depressing episode. So hopefully things will look up a bit as we go forward. Yeah, and if you guys have different biggest witch energy winners, like please let us know. This one was actually very hard to pick a winner.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
I struggled.
I was thinking about Bridie too, to be honest.
I was as well. She was my first thought.
Me too.
Like, wait a minute. Like she didn't even show her full on big witch energy in this. She didn't.
It was miniature, but it was still good.
Yes. Yeah. But
anyway. Well, till next time, guys.
Thanks for listening.
And with that, we've been Big Witch Energy. If you like this episode, check out all of our other episodes right here on YouTube. Please like, comment below, and subscribe for more amazing content. Hydrate for Lesbian Jesus.